Once they killed his monster when he went into a trap. Now he's making better ones on a higher step. On a warm summer day, the doctor went away to a place where he could make it real. His assistant's hips were nice, so he cloned her once or twice. Now his hips are aching, what a deal. Dr. Steen grows funny creatures, lets them run into the night. They become great rock musicians, and the time is right. Time is right. Sometimes when he's feeling bored, he's calling it a day. He's got his computers and they do it their own way. They mix some DNA, some skin and certain spray. You can watch it on a laser screen. And the fellow's blue and gray, or sometimes pink and green. Just check it out on Halloween. Dr. Steen grows funny creatures, lets them run into the night. They become great politicians, and their time is right. One night he cloned himself, put his brother on a shelf. But when he fell asleep that night, it crept up from behind and thought, well, never mind. Took a syringe and blew out his life. Dr. Steen grows funny creatures, let them run into the night. They become a great possession, and their time is. Dr. Steen grows funny creatures, let them run into the night. They become a great obsession, and their time is right. Time is right. Time is right. Time is right.
Warning. The following contains an opinion on the internet. Viewer discretion is advised. Put on your anti-opinion sound mufflers and flip to page 43 of this book is a safe space. Now that we are ready to see an opinion on the internet, let us proceed.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's me, the Arbiter, and I'm back here again to read Creepypastas with my good friend and co-host Rick. Let's get him on board and we can get things started. Bear with me. There we go. Hello there.
Hello, happy early Halloween.
Yeah, happy early Halloween to you too. We only got like 1, 2, 3, 4 more days.
Woo! And of course, got the Yellow Republic coming up in just 3 days. And then after that, well, I'm sure you'll have something planned for Halloween.
Yeah, I was not expecting to have Silent Hill 2 beaten with in this short a time. So I'm probably just gonna remake the Luigi's Mansion Let's Play from the very first Spooktober Spectacular that I did, which works out all the same because in episode 2 of that Let's Play, my mic was muted the entire night and nobody told me.
Huh.
Yeah. But we are here to read some creepypastas.
Ooh, let's go. Before we get started, I gotta get something real quick. I'll be right back.
Yeah. Oh, when you get back. Oh, yeah.
Sarah, you were saying?
I was just gonna say, when you get back, why don't you tell us how that game jam went?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Hold your horse.
In the meantime, I will munch on some mozzarella sticks and drink a soda. That's right, it's ASMR night, chat. I wonder what Rick could be doing.
Sorry to keep waiting, ladies and gentlemen. Complicated business.
No worries, I was just saying, I was wondering what was keeping you so busy.
Yeah, I just well, since we're reading some creepy stories, I figured you'd go first. So I got some cookies and milk to celebrate. By the way, remember last year when we ranked all those Halloween candies or different
Yes.
desserts and stuff? So we did regular Chips Ahoy and Chewy Chips Ahoy. But when I was in the grocery store, I found another variant called Chunky Chewy Chunky Chips Ahoy.
Oh, I've had Chunky Chips Ahoy before.
They are so good. I can't stop eating them. I had a couple at like after middle of the day, and I'm getting more. Ah, just so good. I cannot get enough of these. Anyway, as for the game jam, went pretty well actually. We basically created a little adventure game where you have to go through the woods to find a secret treasure. The story isn't that crazy, but there's a lot of twists and turns in that game, I'll say. Unfortunately, the only downside was we had some troubles in the build at the very end because, like, literally, as I was making the build, we literally hit the deadline when the build finished, but they extended 10 minutes at time to submit it. But I had time to test the build before I uploaded it because I had to get it in before the deadline ended.
Oh no.
But the problem was, the camera for the build got messed up. So, the game's beatable, you can still play it, but the borders got messed up. Thankfully, one of the people I was working with made a backup build on another itch page, so you can play the full game without all those issues. And basically, once the the thing is though, with how game jams work is that there's a voting period where people play your game, but during the time period you cannot make any changes to your itch build during the time period because it has to be the same version you submit it with. But once the voting period is over, we'll be able to put the new build on the website, and that will be the one that page going forward.
Nice.
Yeah, so it is playable. If you want, I'll just send you the link from the working version of the game, and then you can play it for yourself. But right now,
maybe we can play it on stream at some point.
Maybe for Halloween. Who knows? Anyway, before we get the ball rolling, how about we tell some stories?
Yeah.
I'll let you go first, since this is Warrior Jam.
Title A to Z. Control F. All right, now I'm gonna start us off with Lavendertown Syndrome, because I actually had a nightmare about this creepypasta last night.
Really?
Yeah.
This exact story?
Yep.
Whoa, this will be fun. Tell away, my friend.
Hold on, we got exactly the wrong music for this. If we're doing this, I got to do this right.
Ooh.
There we go. The Lavendertown Syndrome, also known as Lavendertown Tone or Lavendertown Suicides, was a peak in suicides and illness of children between the ages of 7 to 12, shortly after the release of Pokemon Red and Green in Japan, back in February 27th, 1996. Rumors say that these suicides and illnesses only occurred after the children playing the game reached Lavendertown, whose theme music had extremely high frequencies that studies have showed that only children and young teens could hear, since their ears are more sensitive. Due to the Lavendertown tone, at least 200 children supposedly committed suicide, and many more developed into illnesses and afflictions. The children who committed suicide usually did so by hanging or jumping from heights. Those who did not act irrationally complained of severe headaches after listening to Lavendertown's theme. Although Lavendertown now sounds differently depending on the game, this mass hysteria was caused by the first Pokemon game released. After the Lavendertown theme incident, the programmers had fixed Lavendertown's theme music to be at a lower frequency, and since then, children were no longer affected by it. One video appeared in 2010 using special software to analyze the audio of Lavendertown's music. When played, the software created images of the unknown near the end of the audio. Yeah, I remember this. This was a spectrogram. This raised a controversy since the unknown didn't appear until Generation 2 games like Silver, Gold, and Crystal. The unknown translate to "leave now." There is also said beta version of Lavendertown. It is said that the beta versions of the Pokemon was released to some kids to test the game. This is the video of the beta. We're not going to be watching that. So yeah, this was a very, very short creepypasta. I am only doing this for two reasons. One, there was the nightmare I had about it last night, and I'm like, oh, you know what? Yeah, I'll do that. And two, I might have told this story on Twitch before. When I played Pokemon Yellow at the age of 7 years old, and I got to Lavendertown, I suffered a depressive episode in which I wanted to run away from home. So,
wait, really?
Yes. Now, so when I heard about the Lavendertown creepypasta years later, like in late high school, I was actually inclined to believe it, because I actually suffered ill effects from listening to the Lavendertown's theme. It didn't make me want to self-terminate, but it did make me want to run away from home. And so I wondered, you know what, maybe there's something to this.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on your nightmare? What happened there?
It was just me playing. It was just like if I were playing the video game, and the Pokemon sprites were trailing behind me, and I had like a Haunter and a Ghastly and a Gengar in my party, along with a Pikachu, and the Red's trainer sprite was colorized, and his face was missing.
Oh.
And then he suddenly he started growing eyes and a mouth, but they were red, like he was possessed.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah. I woke up and I'm like, I just had I woke up at like 3 a.m. and I'm like, I just had a creepypasta nightmare. I haven't had one of those in, well, forever. But you know what? Since we have Lavender Town, let's see if we can find other related ones since that one was so short.
Okay.
Okay, so it looks like the White Hand and Buried Alive aren't on the Creepypasta wiki. Now, the White Hand sprite is an urban legend that comes from Pokemon about a White Hand model that's decaying, and you're supposed to be able to battle it. Not a lot of I suspect that it was inspired by the NPC that asks you if you believe in ghosts, and if you say no, it says, yeah, that white hand on your shoulder, I'm just imagining it. Buried Alive was a supposed boss of the Pokemon Tower that was basically a zombie, and you had to battle it, and there was no code written for if you won. But if you were to lose, you would get a game over screen after it said finally fresh meat and gibberish text appeared. And supposedly, and this is where it goes from a fun story to just stupid, like, come on, nobody would actually do that. Your game would be unable to be reset. Like, you couldn't create a new file. Every time you booted up the cartridge, it would just show that game over screen.
Oh, that's lame.
Yeah. Because let's be real, there is no way in fuck that a cartridge could have that had the technology to pull something like that off back then. Maybe today.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. All right. Well, was that it for your inset?
Yeah, I've done one. Do you want to do one now?
Yes. I'm gonna do one. It's called "I Found a Letter from My Stalker." It's only 12 minutes, though. I know the first one I did was like half an hour. This one's a lot shorter, so this should go super easy. So, let's begin. I found this note nailed onto a tree on my front lawn. I really don't know how to describe it. I'll just let you read it yourself. Here's the note. It begins. I saw you today. It was your birthday. You didn't see me. You hardly ever do these days. Your skin looks so nice and healthy, and your eyes. They were the most beautiful I'd ever seen. You've grown so much. I remember how different you used to look when you were younger. I remember the day I first met you. It was 4 years ago. I was sitting at my desk, head down, listening to the teacher rattling off names for attendance. The teacher called out a name I didn't recognize, and a stranger's voice answered behind me. Was there a new student? The teacher didn't pause for a second, just continued calling out name after name. I turned my head to where the voice had come from. I saw you. A pale thing, so thin, your eyes so red, and a seat that should have been empty. I saw fireflies flying around you, flickering, dozens of them, never straying far from you. I saw them going through you, and coming out through your skin, like you were mist to them. Could you believe I thought you were a ghost? No one else seemed to acknowledge the new stranger sitting at the back of the class. Class after class, hour after hour passed as I waited for something to happen. For someone to notice you, for you to leave, for you to let out a ghoulish scream and claw at me like the horror story I was certain I was in. But nothing happened. Teachers came and went, my classmates laughed and slept, and you just sat there. The bell rang for recess. The other kids ran to their mundanities for the day, leaving me and you to get in the empty classroom. You stood up and pulled a chair from the desk next to you, making it face your desk. You turned your head to me and spoke. Well, you're slow today. Come on, ask me your questions. I didn't know why I didn't run away screaming at that moment. Probably wouldn't have turned out better for me in the long run, but let's not speculate. I guess at that point in my life, I was pretty bloody lonely. I figured there were only a 50-50 chance you'd eat me, and the other 50 was that someone wanted to talk to me. Kid priorities don't make sense to me either these days. So I went along with the flow. I walked over to your desk, sat down in the chair you pulled for me, and asked my question. What were you? You told me you didn't know. You said that once you were a child, just like me, with parents and friends, you used to go to the same schools as me. Then one day, one ordinary day, when you were 10, you just woke up and you were like this, covered in fireflies, and no one could remember you the moment they concentrated on anything else. No one, not even your parents. You told me how I noticed you every day. How I'd think of you until recess every day. How I'd come to you every day. How we would talk every day. How we would meet for the first time every day for the last 3 years. And how I'd forget the instant I walked out the room. How everyone would forget you. How the fireflies would make them. How for the last 3 years you've been alone. Your story was very hard to believe, so I didn't. I asked what reality prank show I was on. You looked, well, unimpressed and asked me to continue telling my story. I was caught off guard by the non sequitur. You said last time I was here, I was telling you a story. A horror story about a haunted house. As you detailed the story, goosebumps pricked my skin. It was a story I'd been making in my head. A story I hadn't told anyone yet. At that moment, a million reactions were open to me, all simultaneously adequate and inadequate. But the only thing that seemed proper was to finish the story for you, so I did. Halfway through, you interrupted me to ask if my mother had recovered from her sickness yet. I had to shake my head, a bit ashamed of the fact that I shared this private matter to a stranger. The story ended a few minutes forward. My next class in another room. You told me to go. Your silliness took me back. You seemed so accepting of your fate, like you'd already gotten used to the idea of being grounded forever. I was a kid back then. I was a particularly smart kid, and I was probably on the onset of a crush. So you could excuse what I did next as an example of my childhood stupidity. I grabbed my scissors, pressed it against my arm's skin, and dug it. As it drew blood, I pushed it forward, till a cut formed the shape I wanted. Letter by letter, I carved your name onto my arm. Just so you know, I don't regret that. Don't get me wrong, kid power might have made me do it, but it sure as hell didn't make the pain go away. It was one of the most painful experiences of my life. But even as a kid, I thought what was happening to you was unfair. I remember how your eyes looked when you saw that, the confusion, how strange it was for you that anyone would want to remember. I remember that look so clearly. When I woke up the next day sliding on my arm, I remembered you. I didn't forget. That day, for the first time, we had a conversation that wasn't so one-sided. You said no one has ever done anything like that before, and suggested I might have mental illness. I won't deny it, that you're a little brilliant. As we talked, a creeping thought came into my head. Did you prefer it when I didn't remember? That night, I was sitting up on my bed, staring at your name on my arm, wondering if I should cover it up so I couldn't see it and give back your privacy when I heard a crush. I looked up to see my bedroom window shattered and a dirty rock on my floor. I looked out the little crack window to see a dark figure on my lawn. You were outside yelling about how we should hang out. It took me a while to get used to how bad you were talking to people. Your style practice made you quite a bit rusty. That was alright, we had a lot of time. For the next 2 years, we spent most of our free time together. Most of the time we talked. You'd tell me an aspect of your life and how you lived. You still stayed in your old house. Your parents never noticed the food that had gone missing. Never noticed the extra room, or had you stolen extra keys. One night, I confided in you that I was beginning to think you were part of my imagination, Fight Club style. After all, what could you do to me that I couldn't do to myself? You spent the next month or so trying to leave bite marks on my ear or neck, to prove a point. I still have a few scars on my ears, so I guess you did. Looking back, I could see the warning signs even then. Your skin seemed to get worse and worse, paler and paler, and you rubbed your eyes raw. It was winter, we had our wake-up call. The morning began like any other. I woke up, brushed my teeth, and started searching for clothes to wear. It was a winter morning, and my room was dark, so I didn't see your name on my arm. The cold sent shivers through my body, and pulled out a long-sleeved jacket. A small bell rang in my head. Don't you usually roll your sleeves up? Yeah, and why did I? That was annoying. I finished tying up and headed to school. On the school bus, I felt oddly content. Like something I'd been worrying about had just disappeared. Poof. I walked up the school stairs, down the hall, through my classroom door, and sat at my desk. The same feeling of a burden forgotten hounded my mind. What was I forgetting? When recess came, I just sat at my desk. When my classmates ran out, it felt like a ritual, but I didn't know what for. I was contemplating just walking out to join them when I heard it. It was something small in the wind, like a whisper, but it came over and over, incessant. It sounded like my name. I knew this was strange, but this was worth my attention. But I felt oddly calm. Everything would be alright. Everything would be just fine. Just ignore it. I sat there at my desk, my mind a war zone, which you took up putting contradictory voices, when I felt a force tugging on my sleeve. The moment I noticed this, my jacket sleeve tore open. I saw your name on my arm, and then your hand that had ripped my jacket open. You've been yelling at me for over 20 minutes. I thought that was the moment we realized how on edge our friendship really was, one accident away from complete erasure. We spent most of the next year in the town library together trying to find out what the fireflies were. It wasn't really a problem for me because of my mother's treatment. My family couldn't afford to go on any trips, and our house didn't have any heating anymore, so I was happy to spend my time with you. Trying to find information was a puzzle in and of itself. After all, how would I read about people I couldn't remember, or how would you find out who was special when no one could even remember enough about them to record them? We found our old family tree and records. Individuals, we had written down the names of everyone in the book on 2 lists, and then we would compare. The names I hadn't remembered to write down, but you had, would become the focus. They were the names who were under the curse of the fireflies. We compiled a list of suspicious books we thought could help us, because they were written by or were about the people we were searching for. I read the books with a list of names side by side, reading it again for every page on the book. You scoured the internet on the library computers, on the lookout for articles about the people. Our search would lead us to the first glimpse we got of what was really happening to you. It was late at night when you found the picture. I was a bit drowsy at the time and almost about to nod off when I had a sharp intake of a breath. I turned to see you standing up, pointing at the screen. I didn't see anything. Well, anything noteworthy. On the screen was a picture of a clearing somewhere in the woods. You held up your piece of paper where you'd marked out the names. Susie Appleby Reagan, 13. Harry Appleby Reagan, 12. Siblings. For a moment, I saw the paper and screen side by side, and then I saw them. 2 figures emerging from the woods toward the camera. They were almost humanoid, with the exception of their limbs, which stretched to nightmarish proportions. Their blank white skin was that of a pure albino. It looked more like a tree bark than anything you would expect to find on a mammal. A cloud of fireflies surrounded the duo. The shorter one looked emancipated. I could see their rib cages, around which their eyes, goodness, their eyes, so small, so red. The taller one, with his white hair, didn't look alive anymore. There was little more than skin wrapped around a skeleton. Fireflies swarmed out of the pair's empty eye sockets. Both reached for the cameraman. I looked at the article surrounding the picture. It was a blog posted by a hiker 20 years after the last picture of the 2 kids. The picture was a mystery to the cameraman as well. He'd been wanting to go to the woods picture for a while now, but he never actually remembered going there. The picture had just appeared on his camera one day, out of the blue. For a moment I looked at your face, your thin, pale face with those red-veined eyes. Would that be you if my scar faded? Just walking horror I'd glimpse then forget. We worked through our reading lists at a much faster pace starting from that moment. Maybe we should have gone slower. At least every book, every website we left untouched, promised hope. The books that we finished and tossed aside promised nothing but the clearing in the woods as one's future. And we tossed aside a lot of books. I believe that I tore through 3/4 of my reading list before I stumbled across a journal. Oh goodness, that horrible, horrible journal. The journal used to belong to a mental patient named Joey, who claimed to be a serial killer. He was locked up in an asylum when the police discovered his supposed victims never existed. He was diagnosed with a need for attention and shoved away. They should have electrocuted him. They should have fried him until his flesh melted and his hair burned. In the journal, he talked about how he carried out these killings. He knew things, bizarre and disturbing things no one else knew. He knew of strange creatures that lived in the woods. One of them, his favorite, were the fireflies. I'm not going to tell you how he summoned these things. I trust you. I trust you more than anyone. But a thing like this belongs to the ground more than it ever will to the human mind. In the end, it's sufficient to know these things were not fireflies. Joe was sort of special by taking a kid, anyone he pleased. He could take them but at any time, in the dead of night from their own homes, or in broad daylight from their front yards. It didn't matter if he was seen. He'd take them to his house and drag them inside. Usually an Amber Alert came up at that point. He didn't care. Like I said, it wouldn't matter soon. He dragged them to a special room in his house. Here the fireflies would come and latch onto them. Now nobody was searching for the kids. Not the police, not the parents, nobody. From then on, he could do whatever he wanted to the kid. He got bored of them after a day or two, after the child had broken. At that point, he disposed of them. Hacksaw, kitchen knife, anything would work. He did into a large pit of bodies he kept in the woods, swarming with bugs. One day I guess he got bored of that too, so he went right to the police station and turned himself in. Not on account of guilt, no. He just wanted someone to know about the stuff he was doing. Dick B-word. Oh, don't get the wrong idea, he never stopped killing kids. The asylum doors didn't stop him from doing what he liked. It just made him improvise. He made a new way, modified the files, so that they could survive without a host, just in a dormant state. When a child, he specified the age, would approach the swarm, it would latch on and begin its effect. Over the years, the child would warm horribly to the things we saw in the woods. I wish I could hate him in peace. I wish I could say the world owed him nothing. But that wouldn't be true. He detailed the way out. On the final page, there was an extra explanation of how to get rid of the fireflies. You must have seen something in my face because at that moment, you asked if I had found anything. I said no and closed the book. A few minutes later, you shut the computer, You picked up the last book and went through it yourself. When you reached the end cover, you tossed it aside. I asked what we should do now. You said it was alright, I could go home. We talked about it in the morning. I stood up and walked past the shelves of books. I headed over to the library and just stopped right outside the door and waited. I waited till I heard the sniffling sounds. I stayed back to our table where you were quietly sobbing. You had your head in your hands. I sat back down as you raised your eyes to me. You said you wish you never met me. How happy you were when you had nothing to lose. How I ruined your life. You never really gotten better at talking to people. There was the worst slow confession I'd ever heard. I remember how we kissed that night. I remember your hand scrubbing my hair. I remember the kiss. I wish it could have been just a kiss. I'm sorry I ruined that moment. When my arms were around you, I was close enough to steal a firefly without you noticing. I remember holding the firefly in my hand. I remember how it struggled until it was a part of me. The firefly shifted. They came over to me and left you. I remember the familiar look in your eyes, the confusion. I never wanted to see the confusion in your eyes again. You deserve to be loved, and you deserve to know that. I wasn't really living anyway. You reached for me. I pulled away as the last lights of recognition faded from your eyes. And then you were just staring at a stranger, walking away into a cloud of strangers. That was a year ago. You've gotten so much better since then. You have so many friends now, so many people at your birthday party. You also look so much healthier. I haven't been as fortunate. My skin's gotten a lot paler, and my eyes hurt all the time now. I couldn't even go to school like you did all those years. I haven't wasted my time though. I found Joey's pit. The bodies. There were so many bodies. There's a grave for those children now. Without me, my mom could afford her surgery. She looked so happy. Just yesterday I saw her pulling on my baby brother. I saw you crying yesterday. You were with your friends, laughing. For a brief moment, your eyes met mine, and then they were so wet. I think I'm going away. For good. I think. You're not going to be happy if I stick around. I'm so happy I met you, even if you don't remember me. No names. Sometimes I go through depressive episodes. I feel so lonely even with my friends. I don't know what's going through my head during these times, and sometimes I end up in the bathtub, a knife in my hands and my wrist bleeding. Until I thought I was cutting my wrist. I wasn't. The cuts. They're letters. I've been carving a name onto my arm. Dun dun dun. And this is the end of the story.
That is a very interesting one.
Yeah, what did you think about it?
I don't think this person was a stalker. I think something happened where the person he wrote the letter to couldn't remember.
Yeah, it's something to do with the fireflies. I guess it's some kind of curse where, like, it makes people forget who you are, and the only person who knows is, like, the serial killer who goes after these kids, knowing that nobody remembers them, because for some reason he can, but the others can. And then there's this guy who essentially took this girl's powers, and, like, now he's in her place, but apparently she's still kind of depressed near the end. So maybe this whole letter's just a depressive episode she kind of went through, but then again, if she found this on her door, someone had to have written it. And the part of the end where she was carving a name, that's exactly what he did earlier in the letter, where he carved a name to remember her.
Yeah.
To her. It was crazy. Yeah, this is quite a wild story, I'll say that. Alright, but that's it for my tale. How about you share a story of your own?
Next up, we have a creepypasta that was made into a video game.
Oh, really?
Yes. Sadly, it's very difficult to play the video game now. It doesn't run on modern computers. It was made for Windows 7 and 8.
Oh, I see.
This creepypasta is called Bedtime. Oh, hold up a moment. Okay, good. We have our music on loop. Let's do this. Bedtime is supposed to be a happy event for a tired child. For me, it was terrifying. While some children might complain about being put to bed before they had finished watching a film or playing their favorite video game, when I was a child, nighttime was something truly to fear. Somewhere in the back of my mind, it still is. As someone who is trained in the sciences, I cannot prove that what happened to me was objectively real, but I can swear that what I experienced was genuine horror. A fear which, in my life, I am glad to say, has never been equaled. I will relate it to you, all now as best I can. Make of it what you will, but I'll be glad to just get it off my chest. I can't remember exactly when it started, but my apprehension towards falling asleep seemed to correspond with my being moved into a room of my own. I was 8 years old at the time, and until then, I had shared a room quite happily with my older brother. As is perfectly understandable for a boy of 5 years, my senior, my brother was evidently wished for a room of his own, and as a result, I was given the room at the back of the house. It was a small, narrow, yet oddly elongated room, large enough for a bed and a couple of chests of drawers, but not much else. I couldn't really complain, because even at that age, I understood that we did not have a large house, and I had no real cause to be disappointed, as my family was both loving and caring. It was a happy childhood during the day. A solitary window looked out into our back garden, nothing out of the ordinary. But even during the day, the light which crept into that room seemed almost hesitant. As my brother was given a new bed, I was given the bunk air bed, which we used to share. While I was upset about sleeping on my own, I was excited at the thought of being able to sleep on the top bunk, which seemed far more adventurous to me. From the very first night, I remember a strange feeling of unease creeping slowly from the back of my mind. I lay on the top bunk, staring down at my action figures and cars strewn across the green and blue carpet. As imaginary battles and adventures took place between the toys on the floor, I couldn't help but feel that my eyes were being slowly drawn towards the bottom bunk, as if something was moving in the corner of my eye, something which did not wish to be seen. The bunk was empty, impeccably made, with a dark blue blanket tucked in neatly, partly covering two rather bland white pillows. I didn't think anything of it at the time. I was a child, and the noise slipping under my door from my parents' television bathed me in a warm sense of safety and well-being. I fell asleep. When you awaken from a deep sleep to something moving or stirring, it can take a few moments for you to truly understand what is happening. The fog of sleep hangs over your eyes and ears even when lucid. Something was moving, there was no doubt about that. At first I wasn't sure what it was. Everything was dark, almost pitch black. But there was enough light creeping in from outside to outline the narrowly suffocating room. Two thoughts appeared in my mind almost simultaneously. The first was that my parents were in the bed because the rest of the house lay both in darkness and silence. The second thought turned to the noise, a noise which had obviously awoken me. As the last cobwebs of sleep withered from my mind, the noise took on a more familiar tone. Sometimes the simplest of sounds can be the most unnerving. A cold wind whistling through a tree outside, a neighbor's footsteps uncomfortably close, or in this case, the simple sound of bed sheets rustling in the dark. That was it. Bed sheets rustling in the dark, as if some disturbed sleeper was attempting to get all too comfortable in the bottom bunk. I lay there in disbelief, thinking that the noise was either my imagination or perhaps just my pet cat finding somewhere comfortable to spend the night. It was then that I noticed my door shut as it had been as I'd fallen asleep. Perhaps my mom had checked on me and the cat had sneaked into my room then. Yes, that must have been it. I turned to face the wall, closing my eyes in the vain hope that I could fall back asleep. As I moved, the rustling noise from underneath me ceased, and I thought that I must have disturbed my cat. But quickly I realized that the visitor in the bottom bunk was much less mundane than my pet trying to sleep, and much more sinister. As if alerted and disgruntled by my presence, the disturbed sleeper began to toss and turn, violently, like a child having a tantrum in their bed. I could hear the sheets twist and turn with increasing ferocity. Fear then gripped me, not like the subtle sense of unease I had experienced earlier, but now potent and terrifying. My heart raced and my eyes panicked. Scanning the almost impenetrable darkness, I let out a cry. As most young boys do, I instinctively shouted on my mother. I could hear something stir in the other side of the house, but as I began to breathe a sigh of relief that my parents were coming to save me, the bunk bed suddenly started to shake violently, as if gripped by an earthquake, scraping against the wall. I could hear the sheets below me thrashing around, as if transformed by malice. I did not want to jump down to safety, as I feared the thing in the bottom bunk would reach out and grab me, pulling me into the darkness, so I stayed there, white-knuckled, clenching my own blanket like a shroud of protection. The wait seemed like an eternity. The door finally and thankfully burst open, and I lay bathed in light, and while the bottom bunk, the resting place of my unwanted visitor, lay empty and peaceful. I cried and my mother consoled me. Tears of fear followed by relief streamed down my face. Yet through all the horror and relief, I did not tell her why I was so upset. I cannot explain it, but it was as though whatever had been in that bunk would return if I even so much as spoke about it, or uttered a single syllable of its existence. Whether that was the truth, I do not know, but as a child I felt that as if that unseen menace remained close, listening. My mother lay in the empty bunk, promising to stay there until morning. Eventually my anxiety diminished, tiredness pushed me back towards sleep, but I remained restless, waking several times momentarily to the sound of rustling bedsheets. I remember the next day wanting to go anywhere but be anywhere, but in that narrow, suffocating room. It was a Saturday, and I played outside quite happily with my friends. Although our house was not large, we were lucky to have a long, sloping garden in the back. We played there often, as much of it as was overgrown, and we could hide in the bushes, climb in the huge sycamore tree, which towered above all else, and easily imagine ourselves in the throes of a grand adventure in some untamed exotic land. As fun as it all was, occasionally my eye would turn toward that small window, ordinary, slight, and innocuous, but for me that thin boundary was a looking glass into a strange, cold pocket of dread. Outside, the lush green surroundings of our garden, filled with the smiling faces of my friends, could not extinguish the creeping feeling crawling its way up my spine, each hair standing on end, the feeling of something in that room, watching me play, waiting for the night when I would be alone, eagerly filled with hate. Oh my, this is a very long page. It may sound strange to you, but by the time my parents ushered me back into that room for the night, I said nothing. I did not protest. I did not even make an excuse as to why I couldn't sleep in there. I simply and sullenly walked into the room, climbed the few steps into the top bunk, and then waited. As an adult, I would be telling everyone about my experience, but even at that age, I felt almost silly to be talking about something... Wait, hold on. As an adult, I would be telling everyone about my experience. Yeah, okay. I felt almost silly to be talking about something which I really had no evidence for. I would be lying, however, if I said this was my primary reason. I still felt that this thing would be enraged if I so much as spoke of it. It's funny how certain words can remain hidden from your mind, no matter how blatant or obvious they are. One word came to me that second night, laying there in the darkness, alone, frightened, aware of a rotten change in the atmosphere. A thickening of the air, as if something had displaced it. As I heard the first casual twists of the bedsheets below, the first anxious increase of my heartbeat at the realization that something was once again in the bottom bunk, that a word which had been sent into exile, filtered up through my consciousness, breaking free of all repression, grasping for air, screaming, etching, and carving itself into my mind. Ghost. As this thought came to me, I noticed that my unwelcome visitor had ceased moving. The bedsheets lay calm and dormant, but they had been replaced by something far more hideous. A slow, rhythmic, rasping breath heaved and escaped from that thing below. I could imagine its chest rising and falling with each sordid, wheezing, and garbled breath. I shuddered and hoped beyond all hope that it would leave without occurrence. The house lay as it had the previous night, in the thick blanket of darkness. Silence prevailed, all but for the perverted breath of my as yet unseen bunkmate. I lay there terrified. I just wanted this thing to go, to leave me alone. What did it want? Then something unmistakably chilling transpired. It moved. It moved in a way different from before. When it threw itself around the bottom bunk, it seemed unrestrained, without purpose, almost animalistic. This movement, however, was driven by awareness, with purpose, with a goal in mind. For the thing lying there in the darkness, that thing which seemed intent on terrorizing a young boy, calmly and nonchalantly sat up. Its labored breathing had become louder, as now only a mattress and a few flimsy wooden slats separated my body from the unearthly breath below. I lay there with my eyes filled with tears, a fear which mere words cannot relate to you or anyone else, coursing through my veins. I would not have believed that this fear could have been heightened, but I was so wrong. I imagined what this thing would look like, sitting there listening from below my mattress, hoping to catch the slightest hint that I was awake. Imagination then turned into an unnerving reality. It began to touch the wooden slats which my mattress sat on. It seemed to caress them carefully, running what I imagined to be fingers and hands across the surface of the wood. Then, with great force, it prodded angrily between the two slats into the mattress. Even through the padding, it felt as though someone had viciously stuck their fingers into my side. I let out an almighty cry, and the wheezing, shaking, and moving thing in the bunk below replied in kind by violently vibrating the bunk as it had done the night before. Small flakes of paint powdered into my blanket from the wall as the frames of the bed scraped along it, backwards and forwards. Once again I was bathed in light. There stood my mother, loving, caring as she always was, with a comforting hug and calming words, which eventually subdued my hysteria. Of course, she asked what was wrong, but I could not say. I dared not say. I simply said one word over and over and over again: nightmare. This pattern of events continued for weeks, if not months. Night after night, I would awaken to the sound of rustling sheets. Each time I would scream so as not to provide this abomination with the time to prod and feel for me. With each cry, the bed would shake violently, stopping with the arrival of my mother, who would spend the rest of the night in the bottom bunk, seemingly unaware of the sinister force torturing her son nightly. Along the way, I managed to feign an illness a few times and come up with other less than truthful reasons for sleeping in my parents' bed. But more often than not, I would be alone for the first few hours of each night in that place, the room where the light from outside did not sit right. Alone with that thing. With time, you can become desensitized to almost anything, no matter how horrific. I had come to realize that, for whatever reason, this thing could not harm me when my mother was present. I am sure that the same would have been said for my father, but as loving as he was, waking him from sleep was almost impossible. After a few months, I had grown accustomed to my nightly visitor. Do not mistake this for some unearthly friendship. I detested the thing. I still feared it greatly, as I could almost sense its desires and its personality. If you could call it that, one filled with a perverted and twisted hatred, yet longing for me, of perhaps all things. My greatest fears were realized in the winter. The days grew short, and the longer nights merely provided this wretch with more opportunities. It was a difficult time for my family. My grandmother, a wonderfully kind and gentle woman, had deteriorated greatly since the death of my grandfather. My mother was trying her best to keep her in the community as long as possible. However, dementia is a cruel and degenerative illness, robbing a person of their memories one day at a time. Soon she recognized none of us, and it... Oh, hold on. Please excuse me. My vision went black for a moment there. Where was I? Soon she recognized none of us, and it became clear that she would need to be moved from her house to a nursing home. Before she could be moved, my grandmother had a particularly difficult few nights, and my mother decided that she would stay with her. As much as I loved my grandmother, and it felt nothing but anguish at her illness, to this day I feel guilty that my first thoughts were not of her, but of what my nightly visitor may do should it become aware of my mother's absence. Her presence being the one thing which I was sure was protecting me from the full horror of this thing's reach. I rushed home from school that day and immediately wrenched the bed sheets and the mattress from the lower bunk, removing all of the slats and placing an old desk and a chest of drawers and some chairs, which we kept in a cupboard where the bottom bunk used to be. I told my father I was making an office, which he found adorable, but I would be damned if I'd give that thing a place to sleep for one more night. Okay, hold up. I'm gonna see how much more of this there is.
Nah, keep going. This is pretty good.
We are going to be here a very long time.
I mean, how much more could there be? I mean, they changed the bed with the death, so can't be any monster, right? I mean,
Oh, Rick, this we are maybe 10% of this page, and 90% of this page is the creepypasta.
Hmm? Oh wow.
This is a very, very long one.
Interesting. Maybe we could do a special Halloween stream where we just cover the story.
Well, we're already this far in. We're already on it, and there's not really a good place to stop.
Alright, well,
I got an idea. We'll treat it like a relay race. I'll read some, and then we trade off.
Alright, sure. Where's the story?
I will share my screen so that you can see what I'm seeing.
Ah, perfect.
As darkness approached, I'd lay there knowing my mother was not in the house. I did not know what to do. My only impulse was to sneak into her jewelry box and take a small family crucifix which I had seen there before. Well, my family was not very religious. At that age, I still believed in God and hoped that somehow this would protect me. Although fearful and anxious, while gripping the crucifix under my pillow tightly in one hand, sleep eventually came, and as I drifted off to dream, I hoped that I would awaken in the morning without incident. Unfortunately, that night was the most terrifying of all. I woke gradually. The room was once again dark. As my eyes adjusted, I could gradually make out the window and the door and the walls, some toys on a shelf, and even to this day I shudder to think of it. From there was no noise, no rustling of sheets, no movement at all. The room felt lifeless, yet not empty. The nightly visitor, that unwelcome, wheezing, hate-filled thing which had terrorized me night after night, was not in the bottom bunk. It was in my bed. I opened my mouth to scream, but nothing came out. Utter terror had shaken the very sound from my voice. I lay motionless, as if I could not scream. I did not want to let it know I was awake. I had not yet seen it. I could only feel it. It was obscured under my blanket. I could see its outline, and I could feel its presence, but I dared not look. The weight of it pressed down on top of me, a sensation I will never forget. When I say that hours passed, I do not exaggerate. Laying there motionless in the dark, I was every bit a scared and frightened young boy. If it had been during the summer months, it would have been light by then. But the grasp of winter is long and unrelenting, and I knew it would be hours before sunrise, a sunrise which I yearned for. I was a timid child by nature, but I reached a breaking point, a moment where I could not wait anymore, where I could survive under this intimately deviant abomination no longer. Fear can sometimes wear you out, make you threadbare, a shell of nerves looking only at the slightest trace of you leaving only the slightest trace of you behind. I had to go out of that bed. I had to get out of that bed. Then I remembered the crucifix. My hand still lay underneath the pillow, but it was empty. I slowly moved my wrist around to find it, minimizing as best I could the sound and vibrations caused, but it could not be found. I had either knocked it off of the top bunk, or it had, and I could not even bear to think of it, been taken from my hand. Without the crucifix, I lost any sense of hope. Even at such a young age, you can be acutely aware of what death is, and intensely frightened of it. I knew I was going to die in that bed if I lay there, dormant, passive, doing nothing. I had to leave that room behind, but how? Should I leap from the bed and hope that I make it to the door? What if it's faster than me? Or should I slip out of that top bunk, hoping to not disturb my uncanny bedfellow? Realizing that it had not stirred when I moved trying to find the crucifix, I began to have the strangest of thoughts. What if it's asleep? Alright, Rick, I will pass it on to you.
Alright. It hadn't so much as breathed since I had woken up. Perhaps it was resting, or believing that it had finally got me. That I was finally in its grasp, or perhaps it was toying with me. After all, it had been doing just that for countless nights, and now with me under it, pinned against my mattress with no mother to protect me. Maybe it was holding off, savoring its victory until the last possible moment, like a wild animal savoring its prey. I tried to breathe as swallowly as possible, and I mustering every ounce of courage I could. I reached out slowly with my right hand and began to peel the blanket off me. What I found under those covers almost stopped my heart. I did not see it, but as my hand moved the blanket, it brushed against something smooth and cold, something which felt unmistakably like a palm's hand. I held my breath as in terror, as I was sure it must now have known I was awake. Nothing. It did not sit. It felt dead. After a few moments, I placed my hand carefully further down the blanket with a thin, poorly formed forearm. My confidence and almost twisted sense of curiosity grew as I moved down further to a disproportionately large bicep muscle. The arm was outstretched, lying across my chest, with the hand resting on my left shoulder as if it had grabbed me in my sleep. I realized I would have to move this cartilaginous appendage if I ever so much as hoped to escape its grasp. For some reason, the feeling of torn, ragged clothing on the shoulder of this nighttime invader stopped me in my tracks. Fear once again swelled in my stomach and in my chest I recoiled my hand disgusted at the touch of straggled, oily hair. I could not bring myself to touch its face, although I wondered to this very day what it would have felt like. Oh no, it moved! It moved! It was subtle, but its grip on my shoulder and across my body strengthened. No tears came, but Lord knew I wanted to cry. As its hand and arm slowly coiled around me, my right leg brushed along the cool wall with the bed lay against. Of all that happened to me in that room, that was the strangest. I realized that this clutching, rancid thing, which drew great delight from violating a young boy's bed, was not entirely on top of me. It was sticking out from the wall, like a spider stuck from its lair. Suddenly, its grip moved from a slow tightening to a sudden squeeze. It pulled its claw at my clothes, as if frightened that the opportunity would soon pass. I fought against it, but its emaciated arm was too strong for me.
Emaciated,
Yeah. Its head rose up, unwithering and contorting under the blanket. I now realized where it was taking me. Into the wall. I fought for dear life. I cried and suddenly my voice returned to me, yelling and screaming, but no one came. Then I realized why I was so eager to suddenly strike. Why this thing had to have me now. Through my window, that window which seemed to represent so much malice from outside, streaked hope. The first ray of sunshine. I struggled further, knowing that if I could just hold on, it would soon be gone. I fought for my life. As I more life, the unearthly parasite shifted, slowly pulling itself over my chest, its head now poking out from under the bed. Wheezing, coughing, rasping. I do not remember its features, I still remember it breathed against my face, foul and as cool as ice. As the sun broke over the horizon, the dark place had suffocated. The room I contend was washed, bathed in sunlight. I passed out scrawny features and circled my neck, squeezing the very life from me. I awoke to my father offering to make me some breakfast. A wonderful sight indeed. I had survived the most horrible experience of my life until then, and now I moved the bed away from the wall. Leaving behind the furniture I believed would stop the thing from taking the bed. Little did I think that it would try to take mine and me. Weeks passed without incident, yet on one cold, frost-bitten night, I awoke to the sound of the furniture where the bunk beds used to be, vibrating violently. In a moment it passed. I lay there sure I could hear a distant wheezing coming from deep within the wall, finally fading into the distance. I never told anyone this story before. To this day, I still break out a cold to the sound of bed sheets rustling in the night, or wheeze brought by a common cold, and I still never sleep with my bed against the wall. Call it superstition if you will, but as I said, I cannot discount conventional explanations such as sleep paralysis, hallucination, or that of an overactive imagination. So I think the screen's frozen. Hello? Zach, you there, buddy? I wonder if Spider Demon got to him. Alright, it's fine, you know. Being a scary story. It's fine, I'm sure he's fine. I was about to say, I'm like, what the heck happened? I'm reading a scary story and I can't even finish it. Alright. Well, anyways, I got to the bottom of the paragraph. Ah, thank you. Alright, it's, there we go. But what can I say is this. The following year, I was given a larger room on the other side of the house, and my parents took that strangely suffocating, elongated place as their bedroom. They said they didn't need a large room, just one big enough for a bed and a few things. They lasted 10 days. We moved on the 11th. Part 2.
Whoa, there's a part 2. There is a part 2. We are... Rick, you wanna know how long this thing is? This ends...
Go on.
Do you see where my mouse is on the column?
Yeah, I saw. This is quite the story.
Should we break this down into multiple parts and like read this on Halloween evening? I don't know.
That'd be a fun idea. Yeah, I'll probably have to get the trick-or-treaters on my stream, but once that's done, we can totally do this. But how about we end it on here, and then we can come back on All Hallows Eve?
Yeah, because this is a 5-part story. We've gotten to part 2.
You know what? How about we do like 1 part a day, right? Because there's 4 days left in the week, and we finish part 1. So we do maybe part 2 tomorrow, part 3 Tuesday, part 4 Wednesday, and then we finish. What's up?
I was gonna play some Luigi's Mansion as part of the stream, but you know what? Yeah, I think we could do that. Because Luigi's Mansion is not a long game, admittedly. I could.
Right.
Do we want to do more creepypastas? Because we've only been at this for... We have not been at this for 3 hours. There's no way. We've only been at this for an hour. It's 8:03 where I live. What time is it where you are?
It is 11:03.
Okay, so you might need to head to bed then, huh?
Yeah, I would love to read more, but it's getting late where I'm at, so how about we break this over the week, leading up to Halloween, that way on Halloween we finish the story for good.
Yeah, I can work with that. If you can believe it, we have 7 viewers according to our streaming software.
Thank you, viewers. Thank you for watching the show. You guys are very much appreciated.
Yes. I will read 1 more pasta. I'll try and find something short for you guys. Not Ben Drown, that's long as shit. Clockwork. That story is atrocious. Oh! Candlejack. Hell yeah, a Freakazoid creepypasta.
Woo!
This one's really short too. In this world, there exists a spirit, neither male nor female. The spirit is covered with a dark cloth, with a separate white cloth to cover its head. It's said to carry an enormous brown burlap sack, in which it holds its victims. It's said that the second its name has been called out, either directly or indirectly, the person is collected and becomes the property of the spirit. Many who have witnessed its appearance have been said to have gone insane, and were later found with their eyes gouged out. The spirit is very, very real, and failure to prevent the mention of its name will cause Candlejack to come and whisk you away. Now, my first exposure to Candlejack was via the creepypasta, but Candlejack is actually a villain from the TV show Freakazoid.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Hoodie the Hooded Man. Oh, this one's decently long. It's not bedtime long, so I can probably read this.
Alright.
Have you ever been influenced by clothing? I don't mean confidence by looks. Have you ever been given more control than ever by an item, or a truth, or just a favorite... Wait, what? Or just a favorite shirt? Have you ever been influenced in the worst way by showing the truth? The following is taken directly from the journal entries. The entries were written by a notorious but unknown killer. He is notorious in the means that everybody has seen his work. He is unknown because nobody knows that he has done it. His origin is unusual. No troubles, no evil family, no magic or paranormal forces. His life was chosen by him and him alone. His identity is also unknown. He will be named from here on as the Hooded Man. April 3rd, 2004. It's been really cold around here. I don't have anything really to cover myself. All I have are my t-shirt and jeans. So today I decided to get a jacket. I was just in a local store. Nothing special. It's a black hoodie with a white lining. I think it looks pretty cool. And when I tried it on, the attendant said it suits me fine. I said thanks to be polite. Common courtesy is so hard to find. So I bought it. I haven't taken it off yet. Not only is it warm, but I can really see myself doing amazing things in it. When I look in the mirror, I smirk. I feel amazing. I can't really explain it, but I like it. I really like it. I feel the need to put my hood up. Something about the hood has a way of masking a person. Even though it shows their face, it hides something, somewhere. It's really late right now. I've been feeling so great all day. Time flew around me. I'll have to explain more tomorrow. April 10th. I've had a hell of a week. I felt so great I walked the halls like a big shot. I'm sure I looked smug. That's why Jack challenged me. He was so angry. Who never do ignoring it. Am I having a stroke right now? Who never do ignoring an insult? What is this sentence?
Wait, what?
Exactly. Who never do ignoring an insult was more insulting than responding with shrewd comments about someone's family. He antagonized me. He asked...
failed their grammar class.
This is not how you are English.
No.
He asked for it. He threw a hard punch, and I stood. It stung harder than before when I actually argued with him. I felt so cool all week. My confidence kept me up. I punched him hard in the stomach, and I lifted him up in an underhook. It felt so good. It really did. Parents calling. April 14th. Jack still isn't out of the hospital. They said he's in a lot of pain. He's spit a lot of blood. His parents told me over the phone. I reflected on it, how great it felt when my fist connected, how his cracked scream sounded. That's good to hear, I said blankly. I don't care about Jack. I smiled at his pain. I keep staring at my mirror. I'm always wearing my favorite hoodie. It feels so empowering. My friends would laugh at what I say. They would compare me to Spider-Man and his black suit. Spider-Man threw his power away. I don't plan on doing anything with my source of confidence. April 22nd. Jack has gone to a better place. The words rang through my ears. He's dead. He lost too much blood. His father told me the day I visited that he was losing blood due to a personal health condition. But the way his mother looked at me told me the real story. I killed him. I still remember the satisfaction of hitting him. I never wanted to kill him. I need to think about what I've done, right? That'll fix my feelings. But what is there to think about? Regret is a foolish emotion. I don't need regret. April 24th. Dad has been avoiding me lately, and Mom just tells me she loves me. They both want me to feel endless guilt, but I won't, or rather I can't. I can fake it for the public, but the truth is, I'm not sorry. Spider-Man's story is starting to make me think more. But why would a cursed or possessed hoodie land in my possession? Everybody who knew Jack glares at me. Everyone who I would talk to have transfer. Everyone who I would talk to have trans. Oh my God! No, that's not how you English. It would be everyone I would talk to has transferred themselves out of your class. Everyone who I would talk to have transferred themselves out of my class or went to a different school. Teachers don't look at me much or get onto me if I'm breaking any rule. Today I threw a pencil at my history teacher. It hit his shoulder. He just froze for a second and continued what he was doing. Everyone either hates me and it probably wants me dead, or they fear me. My writing is the only comfort I have. I can be at peace and let myself go. April 25th. They provoked me. They threatened me. I had no choice. They would have killed me. My hood protected my face. The knife naturally moved from Rob's hand to mine. I didn't mean to. The writing was left. The writing was a short line at this point. April 30th. 5 days. 5 days being interrogated and sleeping in a cell. They decided I was only defending myself. I can hear Mom and Dad talking. They want me gone. They're both scared. I was an idiot to think this jacket of mine was possessing me or changing my personality. It's just a really cool jacket. I love how it looks. I feel like such a badass. I remember how I put the hood up. I put it up when Jack challenged me. I put it up when those guys tried to kill me. I feel no remorse. I feel indifferent. I am in control. I have finally come to realize the insanity. I wanted to kill them. All of them. I needed only a push and the confidence to fight. I got it. Mom and Dad are irritating me. They're all irritating me. Well, that creepypasta could have been better. I suppose it could have been worse, too.
Yeah, that was alright.
It was kind of the perfect length, though, so I'll give it that. Do we want to call it here?
Yeah, let's call it here. I think we've had our fun, but let's not drag this out too long.
Yeah, we'll do more of bedtime as the rest of the week progresses.
Yeah, we're gonna keep doing the weird wall nightmare story. That seems interesting. That's one of content to cover the rest of the week, and the perfect way to cap off the spooky season.
Yeah.
Plus, it gives us something different for our audience, which I'm sure is always a good thing, to spice things up once in a while.
Oh yeah, definitely. Oh yeah, I've been meaning to. I forgot to mention this. We are now at 230 followers on Twitch.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Nice.
We were stuck at 223 for a while, so we got 7 viewers in a short time span. My next milestone is 500 followers. Once we reach that, I'll have like a special planned. Maybe we'll do another karaoke night.
Oh yeah, maybe. Let's see where this goes. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll have more. Well, we're gonna have more of the stories throughout the week, as well as a bit of Luigi's Mansion, maybe something else, depending on how the week goes. But stay tuned. We'll keep you posted.
Now, who is live that we can raid? Let's raid Aki and Fam. It's been a while. Our raid message is going to be Fear the Wall.
No, except the border wall, that's pretty cool, but the actual wall, that's something else.
Alright, we are rating now. 10, 9, 8, 7,
Seven,
6,
six,
5,
five,
4,
four,
3,
three,
2,
two,
1.
one.
Rating
Rating now.
now.
Oh,
Oh, owie, owie, owie. Okay, okay, okay. Yo!
the new Dragon Ball game.
Yep.
Welcome in, Seth Aurelius. How you doing? Woo. Seth Aurelius, how was your stream? How you doing? If you're coming up from Seth's stream,
Alright, cool. Well, that was fun. Wow, look at that. What was supposed to be just one night is now taking over the rest of the month. Which is kind of fitting because I think, honestly, I think we all need a break from the political stuff. At least I do.
Power up.
So getting to celebrate All Hallows Eve, having some fun time, I think a great way to do it.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I got you.
I'll take some time just to go through my my stuff, make sure everything's up and tidy before I apply to a couple more jobs, make sure things up and running. I'm also looking at some more game tech jobs, like companies that like using technologies and stuff. I'll be looking into that field because I've been seeing that for a while because I've had a couple of, like Java accounts, but some of them post like tech jobs
How
as
was
well.
that?
I haven't looked too much into that, but I'm gonna start doing that next just to see where else I can go because like I only want a job porting this year, but if not, maybe early
There's an
next year.
advanced training
But
mode. Yeah, the tutorial was kind of like, it was like,
sooner you get a job, the better. So I've been looking for 2 months in that, still have not found anything yet.
very accurate to the show. I remember this.
But don't worry, I'm sure I will eventually. It's only a matter of time. I got the skills. I know how to like lead teams and stuff. I just need one guy to give me a chance. That's all it boils down to.
I'll keep praying for you, man. I know the job market is absolutely fucked 6 ways from Sunday these days.
I know. I was hoping to avoid that during this time period, but alas, company decided to cut my project, and then later on it got the cut too. So it's probably threw me in like the worst possible time. I was hoping to weather out this until the hard market got a little better, but that's not how the cards played out for some reason. Just still waiting to see where things go. Alright, but until then, I'll catch you next time.
See you around, man.
Alright, boy.
Hello there. Yes. So I know our Discord chat has heard about this, but I'm gonna tell chat about this now because it was an absolute wild ride this morning. So I wake up. My day starts with me waking up at the ass crack of dawn to hearing my cat Garlic making the most the unusual sort of yowling noise that cats do when they're pissed off. And so I see a black cat, very scraggly looking thing, on the balcony. I have no idea how this cat got up there, but Garlic decides I'm gonna fight this cat. And Garlic pushed the screen door to the balcony open, because for context, I left the sliding glass door to the balcony open, so it was just the screen door to let in the cool night air, to cool my apartment. And then Garlic got into a fight with this cat, and then ran the fuck off. Both did. Yes. Yeah, Garlic seems to be alright. Garlic showed up again in my mom's back garden at around 11 o'clock this morning. I was making some tea in my kitchen, and the window in my kitchen overlooks the garden. So I saw Garlic out of the corner of my eye, and so I say, "Oh, Garlic," and he looks around, and I say, "I'm up here, little guy." He immediately looks up at the window, realizing where I'm talking to him from. He walks over to the part of the garden where there's a door that connects the garden section to the chicken section, because the backyard is segmented. And the chicken section is right underneath the window, so Garlic is clearly, like, trying to get to me. He now knows where I am. I go downstairs and pick him up, and bring him back inside. We have a look at him. He didn't seem to have any blood on him, but I'm going to take him to the vet tomorrow morning, just to be safe. They're going to charge, like, $91 for an examination, but what the hell can you do? I mean, under normal circumstances, yes, but I paid all of my monthly expenses with my previous paycheck, so I had to ask my dad for assistance with this one. Yeah, that's the plan. But I am thankful to God that Garlic is okay and seemingly unhurt and that he came back. Yeah. Oh, Bedtime is the name of the creepypasta. Alright, I will share my screen. That way we can relay race this, because it is a long story. How long is part 2? Okay, part 2 seems to be about as long as the first part. Yeah. After writing my account of an horrific experience I had as an 8-year-old... I don't think that's how you use the word "an." Many have encouraged me to speak about the aftermath. I've been hesitant to do so, as I have felt unsettled since I broke my silence. Sleep has not come easy to me these last few nights. My skepticism, however, remains resilient, and as such, I will tell of what I experienced in the other room. This won't be as long as what occurred only took place over a few days, but that was more than enough for me. If you recall, after that unwelcome nightly visitor left me, I was moved into another bedroom a year later. This room was much larger than the previous one, and had a warm and welcoming atmosphere to it. Some places feel bad. The room before felt foul, but this one did not. Thankfully, I was given a normal bed. The previous one was taken apart and thrown out. A welcome sight, I might add. I loved my new room. I enjoyed the space for all of my toys. I was happy that the place was large enough to have my friends drop by, but most of all, I was relieved to just be out of that uneasy, foreboding part of the house. On the first night, I slept more soundly than I had done for a long time. Of course, I still moved my bed several feet from the wall. I told my mother that I and my friends liked to use the gap between the bed and the wall as a hiding place when we were playing. I awoke the next day feeling refreshed and relaxed. As I lay there watching some of my favorite cartoons on a small portable television, I noticed something odd. An old dark brown armchair, which had always been there, sat at the foot of my bed, large and looming. It was frayed from and worn, having been given to us as part of a suite by my cousin, but it had been used many times by even by then. The chair itself was not unusual, but what unsettled me was that I could have sworn that before I had went to sleep, the chair had been facing away from the bed. Now, in the cold light of day, the chair was facing me. I assumed one of my parents had moved it while I slept, probably looking for something, which had been left there before we switched rooms. The second night was not as restful. It was around 11 p.m. and I could hear my parents' television from the other side of the house. The room was largely in darkness, the only illumination an orange hue drifting through my window from the street lights outside. I lay there content until I heard something quiet yet unmistakable. At first I thought it was the sound of my own breath, exhaling and inhaling as I rested. But when I stopped for a moment, the quiet, almost inaudible sound of someone else in the room, breathing in and out, did not cease. It continued, rhythmically and without pause. I lay there in the darkness, but while I was still recovering from the terror instilled in me from my experiences in the previous bedroom, I was not entirely afraid. The breathing was so distant and unlike the wheezing I had heard during my encounter with that thing in the wall, that I remained calm. And even at that early age, I believed that it was so subtle that it was probably my imagination playing tricks on me. Still, I took no chances. I stepped out of bed, walked across the room, and turned the lights on. The sound had gone. I stared at that old worn armchair facing the front of my bed, which was within reaching distance of where I slept, and turned it around to face the other way. I had no real reason to do so, but something about it sitting there filled me with dread. The third night... Oh, you know what? I just realized we don't have the music going. Let's fix that really quick. Yeah, it was, We'll loop that, turn down the volume to 10%. The third night I was not so fearless. Again I awoke in darkness, laying on my back, and I stared up at the ceiling, which seems to happily absorb the dim orange light from the street. The tree outside my window swayed in a calm breeze, casting a strange collection of improbable moving shadows across the room. I could hear nothing but the long and distant hum of the city's night traffic. Just as I began to drift back into sleep, I heard it. A creak from the bottom of my bed, as if something had moved, or shifted its weight on the floor. I raised my head, peering through the darkness, but saw nothing strange. Everything sat as it had done throughout the day. Nothing was out of place. I cast my gaze across the room. Some comics on the floor, a few boxes which had still to be unpacked, the armchair unmoved, still facing away from the bottom of my bed. There was nothing sinister here. I was now fully awake, glancing over at my television, considering whether or not to enjoy some late-night TV. I'd have to keep the volume low, of course, as my older brother would hear it in the next room, and no doubt tell me to switch it off. Just as I sat up in bed, fully in bed, I heard it again, a low creak accompanied by a sound, the sound of the slightest of movements. I looked again at the room. The dim orange shadow cast by the leaves hanging by my window now took on a more menacing form. I still saw no reason to be afraid. I stared at the chair at the end of my bed and saw nothing unusual about it. It's quite common for the mind to take a moment to fully come to terms with what it's seeing. It takes some time to put together the full horror of what is in front of you together, into a moment of cold, bitter realization. Yes, I was staring at the old worn armchair in the dark, but what I also was staring at was the person sitting in it. In the dim light, I could only see the outline of its back, of the back of its head, the rest obscured by the spine of the chair. I sat motionless, staring, praying, hoping that my eyes were being misled by their surroundings. The slow creak of movement as it shifted in its battered throne chilled me to my very core. This was no mere trick of the dark. Then it shifted onto its right side. I knew it was what it was doing. It was turning to look at me. It was difficult to make out, for even in that room, it seemed darker than everything around it. I saw what looked like a collection of long fingers slip over the crest of the chair, and then another. The room was silent, but for the sound of this thing shuffling in its seat, and the crash of my racing heart. At first, I could only make out the outline of its forehead, but then it began to rise up, revealing two pinpoints of light in the dark, recesses of its deeply set eye sockets. It was staring at me. I screamed, and within a moment, my brother and mother came into the room, switching the light on, asking if I had had another bad dream. I sat speechless, barely acknowledging them, staring intently at the now empty armchair. I was only in that room for another few days before we suddenly moved. I saw nothing for the remaining nights, except for my last sleep in that room, where I awoke to the warm air of something breathing into my ear. I jumped out of bed, turning on the light. The slow, rhythmic breathing of something unseen remained louder than before. I spent the rest of the night on the couch in the living room. 2 years later, I slept soundly in my bed, in our new house. There had been no other incidents, and I was sure I had left behind whatever strangeness had plagued me in that little average suburban home. I was, however, left one parting gift. My tormentors, and in my opinion, the watcher in that armchair, was a different entity to the thing in the elongated room. Had one last surprise in store for me. Like an animal claiming its territory, I was not entirely out with their grasp. Excuse? I'm starting to get that impression too, yeah. For one last terrifying moment, I felt the presence of those things. I lay there sound asleep. 2 years since those horrifying experiences, I was in the throes of a nightmare, and suddenly happily found myself awake, safe and sound in my bed. The room was darker than usual. I breathed a sigh of relief, as one does when waking from a nightmare. But the room was so dark. I could see nothing at all. As if something had snuffed out the light, I chuckled to myself, realizing that I must have pulled my blanket up over my face while sleeping. The cotton blanket felt cool against me, but the air was a little too warm, almost stifling. Just as I was about to remove the blanket for some air, I heard it. For the last time, I heard it. The rhythmic breathing of the watcher at the end of my bed. Fear gripped me, followed by anger and despair. Why could I not be left alone? I then did something most peculiar. I decided to speak to it. Perhaps this thing did not mean to harm me. Perhaps it was unaware of the terror it had caused. Surely a young boy deserved some mercy. As the breathing grew louder and closer, I began to cry. I could feel its presence on the other side of the blanket, its breath hanging over me like a stagnant wind. Through the tears, I uttered 2 words which surely would have put an end to all this. Please stop. The breathing began to change. It became more animated, quicker somehow. I could hear something shuffling next to me, standing close by. The breathing then moved, first back to the foot of my bed, and then slowly across the room, through the door into the hallway, and then gone. Half crying, half elated, I lay there still in the darkness, my face covered by the blanket. You may consider this a victory of some sort, but I do not. If those things were real, I know now beyond a shadow of doubt that their intentions were not misconstrued. They were twisted, filled with malice. I would normally never use such a word to describe anything, but it's as close to evil as I hope I ever come. How do I know that? I'll tell you how. Moments after that thing seemed to have left the house, something pressed forcefully down on top of me, pushing the blanket with a great strength against my face. I could feel a large hand with long fingers wrapping the covers around my skull, its nails imprinted upon me like razor-sharp ridges. I managed to slide down into the gap between the bed and the wall quickly, making my escape, clamoring and screaming out of my room, waking my family. Make no mistake, that thing in the darkness tried to smother me to death. Part 3, my fears realized. Rick, you want to have a go at this?
Very well, then.
A few days ago, I submitted 2 nightmarish accounts from my childhood. Perhaps you best read them to truly comprehend what has befallen me. I had been compelled to silence, gripped by the irrational fear that somehow, even after all of those years, should I speak of it, those things would seek me out and once again wreak havoc on my life. In the name of science and reason, I confronted those fears and set out to vanquish those tormented memories, once and for all by sharing them with others, exposing them for what I believed they were, the delusions of a troubled child. I have held on to my skepticism and rationality for dear life. I have allowed them to define me, but this morning I was presented with verifiable physical evidence. Evidence of what I do not know, but it cannot be ignored. And it seems strange to me that the last few days have been so tainted by apprehension and misfortune after finally breaking my silence, that I can no longer rely entirely upon conventional explanations. In the wake of sharing those traumatic experiences I had as a child, I've been plagued by an overwhelming sense of unease. Initially, I attributed this to the fear I had experienced in simply recounting and reliving those terrible events in my mind. But as the days passed, it felt like so much more. A feeling of impending doom consumed my every thought. While sleep came to me, rest did not. Each morning I awoke, my nerves on edge, as if deprived of sleep for an age. Nothing overtly frightening happened during the first few nights. No visitation, no unwelcome bedfellows, no wheezing breaths reaching out from deep within my bedroom walls, but I had the distantly familiar feeling of not being alone. Do not misunderstand. I did not sense someone in the room with me. I did not hear, smell, or feel anything remotely supernatural. But throughout my days and nights, I have sensed something subtle, almost on the periphery of my awareness. The feeling that something is on its way, something is coming, like the first few stagnant blasts of air from a subway tunnel, heralding the arrival of a lurching, unstoppable monstrosity, surprising yet expected. My sense of unease grew with each passing day, pushing its way under my skin, deep into my mind, like some form of cancerous infection. I tried to focus my attention on various writing projects in a vain attempt to fill my mind up to the brim with other thoughts, hopefully leaving no room for those contaminated memories, but those thoughts came to me nonetheless. My anxiety gained momentum until I could think of nothing else. I had to do something. I had studied psychology for years at the university. With this, I knew that anxiety is often the result of a loss of control, and that one of the most effective ways to combat it is to empower oneself. This is what I intend to do. Call it foolhardy, but I was going back to that place, that house where those horrible events took place. I was going to confront those memories and expose them for what they were. Nonsense. It was an hour drive to my old home, but it was one filled with elation. I was confident, at ease, happy. I was in control now, and nothing was going to get in my way. From showing that place I had feared my entire life was nothing but an average humdrum, harmless little suburban house. Gleefully negotiating the country roads and the motorway, I finally made it to the city. Gradually, the streets began to take on a familiar appearance. Memories of playing in that neighborhood came flooding back to me. A play park with my favorite slide, an ash pitch where we used to play football, my schoolyard filled with hide and seek, and friendships long since abandoned but never forgotten. My mind wandered through those memories like a prodigal son walking home. Wandered so much so that before I realized it, I was pulling into that street where I had once lived. The road was long and disappeared far into the distance, finally entering into a sharp, blind turn. It was an old neighborhood, and it had been planned and built long before the advent of the car. This was evident by the narrowness of its roads, creating a strangely claustrophobic feeling, as if the houses on each side rose up leering at the passers-by. I slowed my speed and cast my eyes over each house that I passed. It was a uniform place, with every house looking not dissimilar. My heart suddenly began to beat faster as a cold chill crawled up my spine. There it was. There was the house. It was late afternoon, and the street was quiet, almost lonely. I stared at that little place, wondering how such an ordinary home could have instilled so much fear in me. I had initially intended to only look at the house from afar, confirming it to me as a material construction, entirely explicable, and removed from anything uncanny. But as I parked, I took a deep breath, and before I knew it, I was out of my car, walking towards that old metallic gate, its once bright floral shapes, now darkened by age, flaking deep green paint, revealing nothing but rust beneath. I ran my fingers over its uneven top, and with a subtle gasp, I pushed it open. Walking along that path, I was shocked at how disused the garden was. I thought to myself how much of a wasted good lawn it was, which was all but obscured by a thick mosaic of weeds and other invasive species. But as I neared the house, I realized why. It was unoccupied. Once again, a shudder crept through me, but as my anxiety rose up, I crushed it with my rational mantra. The simplest of explanations is usually the correct one. I assumed that due to the current economic climate, that the house had probably just been on the market for some time, and the owner wasn't too aware of the old sentiment that the first bite is with the eye. But as I looked around, I could see no for sale sign, nor one to let. It genuinely seemed as though this old house had been forgotten, abandoned, and left to rot. The windows at the front of the house were filthy, and as such, almost impossible to see through. But as I wandered around to the back of the building, I could see more clearly inside. I would have imagined that a house such as this one would be empty, but to the contrary, it was entirely occupied by the trappings of a modern life. I could see a television sitting in the living room corner, a coffee table with magazines strewn across it, various pieces of furniture sitting as if they were ready to be used, and a couple of coffee cups sitting on the windowsill, still full, covered in mold. I would have thought the house was lived in if it was not for the thick layer of dust covering everything, and accompanied by the occasional spider's web. It seemed as though the most recent occupants had left in a hurry and never returned. Clambering through a sea of waist-high grass and bushes, I eventually arrived at that innocuous little window at the back of the house. The very sight of it frightened me, but this was mere memory and not the strange feeling of being watched from within as I experienced as a child. Peering in, the room looked eerily familiar. I suppose there is little that can be done with a room so small, so oddly narrow. But through the dirt-covered glass, the room looked almost unchanged from when I had slept in it. A bed, a set of drawers, and what looked like an assortment of toys on the floor. A profound sense of anger washed over me momentarily, but I shook it quickly from my mind. The room was clearly that of a child's, and the thought of that thing harming another innocent filled me with contempt for such a thought. And within me swelled the desire to protect any child from such an abomination. As I gazed at that wall, of which a bed lay alongside it, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. For a moment, and it was only the slightest, I thought I saw the blankets on the top of the bed move. More than that, through the window pane, I could have sworn I heard a wheezing gasp. Closing my eyes tightly, I repeated another scientific mantra: science does not owe its debts to the imagination. Opening my eyes, I saw nothing but an empty bedroom. No foul spirits, no unearthly things, just a room. No more, no less. I breathed a sigh of relief as if all was well with the world for the first time in many days. You may think that it was wishful thinking, but I genuinely felt that I had shown myself that there was nothing to be scared of other than my overactive imagination. Alright, Rick, I'm passing the baton to you.
Alright, let's see. One sec, sorry about that. Alright, so you just read the paragraph about the bedroom, right?
Yes.
Alright, so at the bottom of the... Oh, did you read the paragraph about the sycamore tree?
Right here.
Oh, so this is where you left off, okay?
Yeah.
Got it. It was starting to get dark, and I wanted to be home before the night. Filled with confidence now that my anxieties are behind me, there was one last thing I needed to do. When we had left the house, we did so in a hurry. As a child, it was disorienting, even frightening, to leave everything I knew behind. But there was one thing left which I always wondered about. At the bottom of the garden stood a sycamore tree, which looked to be even older than the house. I was amazed at how unchanged it was. I had gone on to pastures new, but the old sycamore still stood wise, warm, and almost friendly in its appearance. I think it's a rite of passage for any child to have a place to hide things. It's often their first experience with independence, totally removed from any authority figure. For me, my stash was halfway up the old sycamore. I'm sure I must have looked like a fool, but I happily and gleefully climbed the tree with abandon. The configuration of the branch had changed in places, but overall, the happy memories of playing amongst the limbs of the old sycamore, of having a little piece of the world to myself away from everyone else, seemed vivid, as it was remarkable how much really unchanged. Now, for context, that's where I left off before that whole incident happened, but anyway, let's continue. Halfway up, I caught my breath and smiled to myself. In the central trunk of the tree lay a hollow. Whether it had been created by an animal, or perhaps dug up a gale on a weakened branch long ago, I did not know. But it was where I kept my things. If I found something where I was sure I would be taken from me for being inappropriate, into the hollow would go. The truth is, though, that the majority of the items inside were not very interesting. Most just toys and really exotic pieces of contraband, like a slingshot or some smoke bombs. I had no reason to hide the toys. When I was young, it felt adventurous to have a secret. The hollow was dark and filled halfway with rotting leaves, no doubt deposited there from countless autumns. Nevertheless, I reached deep inside to see what remained. I couldn't believe it. I had found the toy that I had hidden there before we all moved. All those years ago. I could feel the plastic in my hand, its sharp edges unmistakable, but the leaves and darkness of the hollow obscured this view from me as I struggled to remove it from the thick, wet mixture of rotting leaves and rainwater. It seemed to be caught amongst a collection of small twigs. Please roll. Thank you. The reason I was so excited was that I knew when we moved that I had left one of my favorite toys behind, a small plastic First World War British soldier. It may not sound like much, but I had grown up on my family stories of my grandfather's adventures during both wars, and while he had passed away before I was born, I would often act out exaggerated versions of the stories with this small soldier in the role of the hero. My typical grandfather. At the time, I thought a hollow was the perfect hiding place for a soldier. My delight, however, quickly turned to horror. I felt sick to my stomach, for as I pulled the soldier out, I realized it was not my toy, but something else entirely. Stuck to the back of the hollow amongst the sludge, and now in my hand, was the skeletal remains of a small animal. The bones crunched together in my wrists, as the small flakes of hair and flesh left on it petrified between my fingers. I almost lost my balance as the rotten and potent smell of death escaped through my moist scrap, invading my senses. I climbed back down, carefully dejected. There was nothing else in the hollow. My toy was gone, probably taken by another child during the subsequent years. What remained of that poor animal, I buried under some loose earth in the garden. I left that place immediately. Despite my unfortunate encounter in the hollow, I still felt empowered, and I had actually plucked up the courage to revisit that place to see how ordinary it really was. It made me feel in control once more of my faculties. I did not, at that time, require anything other than a conventional explanation. I said goodbye to my old neighborhood, to that bad memory once and for all, and began to make my way home. By the time I had driven onto the motorway, something had begun to filter through from the back of my subconscious. At first I disregarded it, dismissing it as my imagination, but as the sun had shown its last and dipped below the horizon, I sensed a growing of a compulsion in me. An idea which seemed to have been born and nurtured for no good reason, no rationale, no sound casual footing, but one which had to be followed at all costs. I must get home. I increased my speed, slipping sporadically between the slower cars on the motorway, looking in the rear view mirror, keeping an eye on what might be following. I had to get home. Again, I drove faster, constantly looking behind as I racing some unseen pursuer, 70, 80, 100 miles per hour. I tore along the road. I beeped, I yelled, I sweat lashed off me. What was happening to me? Please, just let me go home. Let's see. White-knuckled, I finally made off the motorway and onto the country roads, which would lead directly to my town. The roads were narrow and wound around now bleak and ominous countryside. Darkness seemed to blanket the road in front of me. I turned my full beam on and breathed a sigh of relief to see a bright light again, even if artificial. The manic anxiety which had seemed to grip me on the motorway appeared to have diminished, however. I still glared into the rear view mirror more often than I should have, just to make sure that there was something following me. What a ridiculous thought, to think of something chasing my car, to put myself and others in danger by speeding down a busy motorway. Madness. Still, madness or not, I felt compelled to get away as quickly as possible. And even though I had managed to collect my nerves, the loneliness of the road I was on fueled my yearning for my own town, my own street, my own bed. Nervously, I traversed the web-like winding roads that steamed through the countryside, feeling relieved at the first sight of lampposts, of civilization, at the borders of my town. I pulled up outside my house, switching the engine off, and sat for a moment in silence. I had to stop all this nonsense. Things coming out of the walls, watchers smoothering me at night, looking to someone's window like a prowler. All this was lunacy. Tomorrow I would start afresh. No more writing about my experiences, no reliving of dreadful nights. Just getting back to normal, carrying out my work, spending time with my girlfriend, and most of all reaffirming my belief, faith, and confidence in science and rationality. I know this guy had a girlfriend, it's pretty cool. Side note. Anyway, let's go. Then the thing on my back sent Lint over, grabbed me by the shoulder, and breathed a foul, rancid breath from deep inside its lungs down the back of my neck. I scrambled for the door, my arms flailing around looking for the lock. Fear possessed me, shook me. A fear I remembered all too well, a fear from all those years ago, lying awake at night in that sickening room. The inside of the car had grown much colder, but that was nothing compared to the icy fingers burrowing into my shoulder. I honestly thought I was going to die, that this thing would finally get its way after all this time. The door handle popped in my panic grip and I fell out the driver's seat onto the pavement. For the briefest of moments I thought I caught a glimpse of something in the back seat, big. The form of an old man, yet twisted, distorted, grinning from ear to ear. Luckily there was no one around. As had there been, I would have appeared a mad fool, for the car was empty. I grabbed the keys from the ignition and booted the door shut on my foot, locking it for the night. I staggered down the path and into my house. I'm not going to lie to you, but I drank myself to sleep last night. You may recall I said I had evidence, actual physical evidence of something unnatural. You might be wondering what the evidence is. Well, I could say it was the marks on my shoulder that made me shudder with fear about it. Or I could tell you that my bedroom window lying prized open this morning. But what looked like claw marks had left me dreading tonight. Or any other. But no. Oh, 1 second. My ears almost did. There we go. Anyways, but no. None of that scared me as much as what I saw today upon waking. Sometimes the most frightening of messages are the most simple. For lying on my chest as I awoke this morning was a toy soldier. The soldier I had hidden in that hollow all those years ago. Returned to me as an adult, bitten in half.
Part 4, Something Wicked This Way Comes. Actually, should we stop here? How long have we been at this for? We've been at this for 45 minutes, 46?
Yeah, we barely catch an hour, so how about we do... Yeah, let's get you the story then. We haven't even got an hour yet, so let's keep going.
Yeah, we'll do another part, and then after that I will hop into Luigi's Mansion.
Perfect.
Last night was the most heart-wrenching and frightening of my life, so much so that I can barely bring myself to contemplate it. By now I will have submitted what occurred during my visit to that cursed place I once called home. A visit which heralded the return of my childhood fears. No matter what foul thing befell me then, nothing could have prepared me for last night. After waking up to the chilling sight of that toy soldier bitten in half, I found that the window to my bedroom was slightly ajar. On closer inspection, it looked entirely as if the window had been prized open from outside. The latches were bent back, out of position, as if subjected to an unrestricted, unbound, brutal force. From the outside looking in, I could see 3 indentations where the unwelcome housebreaker had used some kind of tool to leverage the window unnaturally away from its latch. What was peculiar about those markings was that they seemed to cut across the outside of the window frame like an old uneven razor, unlike a crowbar or other implement which would have merely left a dent where it had been used as a wedge to force the window open. Nothing had been stolen, and I attempted to rationalize the markings on the window as human-made and not claw-like as they appeared to be. The toy soldier returned to me so violently I could not explain. My heart sank at the very thought of it. I knew it was a message, but it seemed to be more of a twisted joke, announcing the arrival of my childhood predator rather than something to be puzzled over or interpreted. I spent the morning checking each room of my house and its contents. Nothing was missing. I could only hope that whatever fiend had been in the back seat of my car the previous night, that it had only wished to frighten me one last time and then be on its way. Perhaps its reach would be weakened so far from my childhood bedroom. It's all too easy for any sane person to persuade themselves that a traumatic event is something more benign, but in this instance, I couldn't. I could not. That broken toy was not a mere joke, but a promise that it would return for what I did not wish to know. My thoughts naturally tumbled inwards and back to those terrifying nights I had as a child. I was now reintroduced to the apprehension of bedtime, the longing for the day, and the anxiety of night. Like an old and relentless enemy, my fear grew throughout the day, fear festering inside of me, leading to strange and ominous thoughts about the consequences of unwittingly bringing that thing home. Do not misunderstand me. My fear was not simply for my own safety. As a child, I believed that my nightly visitor was transfixed and consumed by wanting me, but I did not feel that my loved ones were in any danger. This, however, had changed. I did worry. This time I did feel nothing but fear for my loved ones, because you see, I do not live alone. My girlfriend and I moved in together over 2 years ago. I have caused enough damage now that I do not wish to speak her name, and will simply refer to her as Mary. Bruh, what the fuck? I just got done playing Silent Hill 2! Mary and I had a happy existence, and in fact, we were very much in love. This coming Christmas morning, I was going to propose to her, but that beautiful moment has now been bitterly taken away from me by that rancid abomination. I knew that Mary would be home that evening. She works in events and promotion, and as a result, is often away from home for days at a time, traveling around the country coordinating various conferences and exhibitions. I do not complain about this, as she and I both know that I am a solitary character, and the odd few days of solitude normally do me good, allowing me to dive headlong into my writing and absorbing each and every word undisturbed. Despite this, I always miss her, and with the events of the past week, reliving those torturous nights and then allowing them to return, I had missed her far more acutely than I had ever previously done so. She arrived at around 6 p.m., and I greeted her with a smile and a warm embrace, and a passionate kiss. I tried to hide my perturbed state of mind from her, but Mary knows me better than anyone I have ever met, and immediately inquired, "What's wrong?" I tripped and fumbled through my words as I explained to her that I had written a story about my childhood, and that exploring those dark and twisted memories had left me distraught. Mary has an incredibly caring nature, and she immediately lay her suitcase and bags on the floor, sat me down on our couch, and with her soft and gentle way, asked me to talk about the whole ordeal. But I couldn't. I couldn't mention this thing, this wretch which had now found its way to our home. An invisible and twisted invader which had been led there by my idiotic curiosity. At the time I felt that she would think me mad, but now I wish I had told her the truth. If there is one thing more damaging to a relationship than a lie, it is a half-truth. Not because it's deceitful, but because it's a corruption of the truth, perverted and abused to suit the teller's needs. I told her my half-truth. I told her about my story, the thing in the narrow room and the watcher at the end of my bed, but that is where the truth ended and the lie began. I deliberately and deceitfully mentioned that it was of course just my imagination as a child, and neglected to talk of my experiences of returning to the scene of those depraved crimes, knowing that she would see the damaged window latch and claw marks. I spun my web as I told the grand tale about waking up to a burglar attempting to break into our house, and having to chase them away. I was quite the hero. I lied to her, and she showed me great sympathy and kindness for my deception. I was embraced by the truth then, and am ashamed of my lie now. If I had been truthful, then perhaps we could have faced this menace together, but instead that thing took advantage of my dishonesty and put a wedge between us. The events of last night desecrated the most important thing in the world to me. Nighttime arrived in all of its bleakness and was unwelcome. I lay in the darkness waiting. Mary was sound asleep next to me, each breath a soothing reminder of companionship. But despite my growing aversion to loneliness, I would have no sleep that night. I knew from experience that when my uninvited guest would show itself, it would do so with subtlety, increasing its grip on me with each visitation, as if requiring time to build up its strength, a leech feeding on my fear for succour. That is such a strange word. I know it's a real word, but man, that is so... My nerves kept me on edge, which fought back the oncoming onslaught of sleep admirably. In the end, though, biology won, and as my bedside clock lumbered towards 4 a.m., sleep took me. The relaxing blanket of nightly oblivion, anxiety washed away, my worries a distant memory, sinking deeper into the soft mattress below, and finally into a long-sought rest. Sleep, no matter how deep it is rarely all-encompassing. For as I hovered over the cusp of a dream, something began to bother me, something invasive yet distant. I slowly opened my eyes and allowed them to adjust to the darkness. Mary lay sound asleep, and I calmed myself by listening to her breathing in the night. Inhale was followed by exhale, again and again. Rhythmically, hypnotically, I began to drift towards sleep once more. But no, there it was, something else, distinct yet undefinable. It was distant, out of the way, almost obscured or smothered, as if coming from behind something. I strained my ears in an attempt to define it, but it was all too quiet. I remained in the bed for several more minutes, but with each passing second that almost inaudible sound grated on me, like broken glass on a raw nerve. Sleep was now abandoned, and with much frustration I decided to reluctantly investigate the source of the noise. I sat up in bed and listened intently. It was unlike any other sound I had ever heard. Quiet, low. But as my mind adjusted to the noise, I slowly began to piece its nature together. It was most certainly obscured by something, but the closest thing I could relate it to was a repetitive murmur. I heard something similar previously when I was a child, visiting my grandmother in a nursing home, a place which had left an impression on me. Seeing the wandering residents confused and of a fractured mind, meandering around the grounds like lost inmates, murmuring repetitively to themselves of days gone past, repeating nonsensical phrases and words. This is what it reminded me of, a continuous stream of indecipherable words uttered by someone in the throes of confusion. How much longer do we have to go here? Hold up. Okay. Okay, just gonna bookmark this really quick. Alright, we've got a long way to go.
Interesting. Alright, so I think we're like halfway through part 4, about a quarter of the way.
Yeah, about half, I would estimate. You want to take over?
Sure, I'll take it over. Let's see. I turned to check on Mary, watching her chest rise and fall with each breath. Assured that she was undisturbed, I left the bed. As I stood up, I recognized immediately that the murmuring was louder. While dark, I had left a light on in the hall, as I always do which crept under the door and allowed me to view the room with a dim but visible light. I turned around to see if anything was out of place, but the room appeared as expected. My mind ambled back to the night as a child in this second room, when noises could be heard from some unseen yet ever-present menace. I took a step forward as I did so. The noise once again grew in volume. While I was still at a loss in deciphering the words, I could now hear the character of the voice. It was old, scratched by age with a harsh, guttural undertone to it. The words were being repeated at a frantic pace and seemed anxious, yet muffled by some unknown barrier. I was frightened, but I drew my strength from Mary being in the room. And with a deep breath filled with trepidation, I took another slow and silent step forward, my bare feet cushioned by the cold floor below. Again, the voice became louder. I wasn't sure if I was imagining it, but I could have sworn it had become more agitated as I drew closer. The next step I took shook me to my very core, for as that murmuring, garbled voice grew louder still, amongst the rambling, graveled sound of it, I heard a word. A word which shot nicely through my bones. A word to be feared. It spoke my name.
Dear
My goodness,
God, it spoke my name.
You know, to me, it was as if it was as if knowing who I was somehow endowed that thing with an unlimited reach. That I may never be rid of it. That it could kill me at any moment. Suddenly, something caught my eye. A movement accompanied by a ruffle of cloth. I knew now where that ripping, agitated voice originated. I knew now why it was muffled and difficult to decipher. I could now see it, only a few feet in front of me. Standing behind the closed curtains. The moon was in its ascendancy outside, and while its glimmer could not entirely penetrate the thick cloth, it could barely and faintly outline the thing watching between my window and the curtains. I cannot now convey the strangeness which then overcame me. My anxiety and terror had heightened, but an unusual compulsion and untimely sense of purpose took me over. I had to see what it was. I took another tentative step towards the curtains. They swayed slightly as if caught by a breeze, but I could not tell whether the movement had been caused by myself or the hand of the thing behind the shroud of cloth. I was now close enough to hear its labored breathing, the displacement of fluid at the back of its throat, palpable each inhalation. This was it. I was going to confront this monstrosity from my past. This tormentor of children. His coward. Raising my right hand slowly, I accidentally touched the fabric of the curtain, causing a subtle ripple that parted, and then momentarily I gasped, for through the temporal slip, only for a moment I saw it. My God, how can I describe when I was standing there? Even now I closed my eyes and wished that I could erase from my memory. It shivered and shook as it continued to murmur, repeating some indecipherable phrase, sounding like a bizarre mixture of numerous languages. His emaciated skin stretched over an unnatural frame of brittle and prominent bones, vertebrae, ribs, and other inner workings almost protruding through his paper-thin, pale, languorously pink, and almost bruised-looking husk. As malnourishment appeared, his stomach was descended in places, and its bony appearance did nothing to diminish the feeling that it was capable of exerting itself with brute, perverted force of any of its victims. Let's see. Sickness swelled in my stomach. A tainted, offensive smell filled the air, and as it murmured and whispered in the darkness, through what sounded like broken and fractured teeth, I could not help but feel pity for this wretch, quivering in the night as if the victim of long starvation. I quickly came to my senses and realized that this thing was not to be pitied, feared. Not to be understood, but exposed. It was not shivering because it was cold. It was shaking with excitement, like a drunk hag anticipating their next dose. Standing there contemplating what I had just seen between the curtains, I once again prepared myself to remove its shroud, cloth protection, and to reveal it for what it was. A cold-hearted vandal, a prowler of the worst kind, a deviant featuring its own delication. As I once again raised my hand to draw the curtain, something caught my attention. Its intensely confused, gravely and incoherent whispers squeezed through that broken mouth and uttered three most terrifying words I have ever heard. Look behind you. Let's keep going. A cold breath slid down my back and my neck. Momentarily I froze, but love is a powerful motivator. Had I been on my own, fear would have taken me, shaking any possibility of resistance from my mind. But with Mary sleeping soundly in the same room as that thing, shielding someone I loved from that wretch was my only thought. I turned around slowly, and as I did so, I could hear wheezing, gasping, grasping for air. At a quarter turn, I could smell its breath, but the stench of death hung in the air, lank and foul. Then I heard another voice. It was not the Not that whore in the darkness, but Mary. She let out a scream which startled and distressed me to my very core. A scream which will haunt me for the rest of my days. I turned quickly and laid eyes on it, but it wasn't behind me. It was on the bed! It writhed and rasped, wheezing in delight, its bony spine curved with the anguish of countless years protruding through a ragged, torn piece of cloth which hung loosely over its torso, advancing it to appear almost human. But was it human? Had it once been human? Or was it something so vile, so despicable, so utterly and utterly contemptible, that no man or woman could ever attempt to quantify or understand? I sprang forward toward it, grabbing, hitting, putting at the thing with every ounce of my strength to loose it. Its loose skin slipping through my hands, it squeezed and forced Mary's face into her pillow with glee, as its other limbs arched and contrived through tearing at her nitrous, running its long sharp fingers over her naked body, which it sorely caressed. Mary's screams were muffled by the pillow as I began to fear that she was being suffocated. I shouted, I yelled, I pleaded with the thing to leave her alone, to take me, to do anything it wanted, but they only served to animate the fiend to even greater depravity. It was hurting her, cutting her, my beautiful Mary. Suddenly it stopped attacking her, but it still kept one of its real ghastly, gaunt yet willing hands on the back of Mary's head, pushing her face further into the pillow. I had my hands around its putrid neck, trying as best I could to strangle the beast, but my efforts were in vain. Its scrawny frame, its belly, its overpowered strength. I watched instinctively as it began to run its cavernous fingers through Mary's hair, slowly and almost with affection. I could now hear the twisting and crackling of bone, the popping of cartilage, the snapping of tendons. Thank God it was not coming from Mary. I was now on its back, my arms wrapped around its throat, and my chin rubbing against the abrasive skin of its shoulders. As its spine dug sharply into my stomach, it twisted its head in an entirely inhuman way. Its neck clicked and groaned under the strain with every arithmetic movement, as if hindered by 1,000 years of rigor. It was now looking at It was now looking at me. I have heard it often said, some people say that they cannot see the forest of the trees, but now I truly appreciate that sentiment. So close was I to its back, I too stared I could not take its surrounding features. I increased my grip, I swore, I screamed. I would have torn the throat out if I couldn't, but it was all in vain as it continued to run scrawny fingers through Mary's hair, nonchalantly while looking at me. I don't think I could ever truly recover from the sound which seeped out through what I assumed to be its approximation of a grin, a wheezing sigh, a grunt, something which sounded very close to a sinister, otherworldly laugh, as its face touched mine. Its eyes stared deep into me. Not even my reflection was returned. Two looking glasses into a sanctuary for the dark, devoid of light, happiness, and love. It was staring as if it wished to say something, as if it was trying to communicate a simple idea to me. Malice.
I'll take over from here. With a wrenching stuttered and violent movement, it tore an entire fistful of hair from Mary's head, leaving behind an open wound. Then it was gone. Mary did not scream, she merely whimpered. I turned the bedside lamp on, but no words came out. No words of care or sympathy could console her. She wept uncontrollably. The bed was soaked in blood, which had seeped out from numerous scratches on her back and the large cut where an entire section of her hair had once been. I hugged her, told her that everything would be all right. Then she looked at me. Looking at her tear-filled eyes, I knew that she thought immediately. She thought that I had attacked her, that I had done those terrible things to her. Of all experiences I have had, the look of betrayal and disgust and contempt on Mary's face will remain the most painful. She is gone. After composing herself, she gathered up some things and left. I tried to explain. I tried to tell her everything that had been happening. But she would not listen. Who would believe such a preposterous story? She simply said that she would not call the police, but that if I ever attempt to contact her, she would do just that. To her, I was the aggressor, not the thing. As she left, she turned to look at me one last time and then burst into tears. I now know that I have lost her forever. The woman I love more than anything on this earth thinks I'm a violently hideous human being. If only she could understand that whatever did this to me, that it was not human. And if it ever was, it had long since abandoned that nature. It was 5 a.m. when Mary left. It's now 9 a.m. I'm sitting here in the cold light of day at my kitchen table, writing this so that there is some kind of record of what has transpired, so that people know, so that Mary knows, that whatever happens, that whatever occurs from here on in, that it was the despicable creature from my childhood, from that cursed, narrow room all those years ago, which rained this misery down on me, upon us. I must now dispense with the sentiment. I could easily sit here mourning the loss of my relationship with Mary, or I could allow myself to be overcome with fear, to do nothing, but that simply will not do. I can hear the laughter of my neighbor's children outside. At different stages in my life, I remember that same feeling of joy and happiness from something as simple as playing with friends, or climbing a tree, or kissing the woman you love, or even drifting off to sleep at bedtime to dream of what could be in the safety of a happy family home. Memories, only memories. I fear I will never experience that happiness again. This thing has broken me, but I am resolute. Whatever that hideous wretch has in store, whatever it desires to do with me, I will not allow that thing to harm another person or to invade another child's life as it did mine all those years ago. I must leave you all now, as there is much to be done before it gets dark, before it returns. My plans are made, and with any luck, they will succeed. I wish I could say we will speak again, but I think that this is unlikely. I hope you understand what must be done, because tonight I'm going to kill it.
Dun dun dun. Yeah, let's see how much is left of here actually before we move forward.
We'll come back to this tomorrow night, and hell, we'll probably do another creepypasta because part 5 is actually kind of short. Well,
oh wow! Holy crap, that's a long thing.
yeah, okay.
Might take that's pretty long. Yeah, that might take an hour just to get through that.
Lazy in the chat, fun. Yeah, we're gonna end the creepypasta narration here, and we're gonna roll into Luigi's mansion.
Woohoo! Stop the music.
Where did I put the oh, here it is. Yes. So, I'll drop you off. My first incarnation is gonna pick y'all up where I leave you off. Don't worry, it should be a quick transition. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's me, the Arbiter, and I am gonna get the call going with my good friend and co-host Rick, and we can get to the creepypasta reading. How about it, folks? Let's do it. Hello there.
Hello there.
So, I know I posted about this on the Discord server, but real quick, I want to give our viewers an update on Garlic, everyone's favorite cat.
Alright. Share away, my friend.
So, I got a call from the vet this afternoon. They found that he had tapeworm, which means he probably swallowed a flea, and he did have fleas, so they defleed him, dewormed him. They gave him an antibiotic shot to prevent cat scratch fever and feline AIDS. And a big thank you to my dad and my dad's wife. They were generous enough to actually cover Garlic's medical bill and because the vet that I go to does not take payments, believe it or not. You cannot you cannot pay your vet bill in installments at this vet.
Oh.
So
so you have to pay it outright, like completely.
Yeah. It was like $300 for everything, and my dad and his spouse were generous enough to loan me $300 in addition to what they loaned me yesterday for the examination. And so, yeah, Garlic is going to be okay. I'm going to pay back my dad as soon as humanly possible. He said there's no rush, but I mean, I'd feel bad if I didn't. I am just super happy that Garlic came back and that he's in one piece and that he's all taken care of.
That's awesome, my dude. I'll say this though. I know your dad was married, and by that logic, wouldn't that make his wife your stepmother?
That's a very good question. Because I have no connection to Amy, my dad's wife, or second wife, or is it third? I don't know.
Third?
Yeah, there was a woman he married between my mom and Amy. I believe her name was Kate. Both my dad... So both
Oh,
my
okay.
dad and my mom have remarried on multiple occasions. It's weird though, because in the case of Aaron, my mom's third husband, or Ivel, my mom's second husband, they were involved with me. Ivel was actually the one who introduced me to Doctor Who. So y'all have
Really?
y'all have Ivel, the sociopath, to thank for my existence as a VTuber, or at least the Doctor Who VTuber.
Wait, what made him a sociopath? Was that the one who like hurt your mom or something?
Yes, he was a
Oh.
narcissist and a sociopath. Not a good dude. Not a good dude. But he did do some good. He was a bad person who did good things. Aaron was different. Aaron was an interesting situation because things got really bad between him and Mom at the end of their marriage. Aaron let his temper get the better of him a couple times. He didn't actually hurt my mom, but I was afraid for her safety, so I loaned her my pocket knife to keep concealed on her. But the funny thing is, me and Aaron actually were still on good terms by that point, so that put me in a really awkward place. But Aaron being my stepdad, yeah, sure, he was involved in my life. He helped me out with several things, personal development and all that. Helped me find my second car. Lo and behold, that car was a piece of crap, but he didn't know that. I figured that, oh, this guy who's selling us the car works with Aaron on they're part of the same. They work together every day. There's no way I'm getting screwed here. Lo and behold, I was, but neither of us figured that. But in the case of Amy, my dad's third wife, it's like I don't really have any connection to her beyond like maybe a couple phone calls and the fact that she was a part of the decision making for Dad to loan me the money to pay for Garlic's vet bill. I don't know if her being my dad's wife makes her my stepmom or what. That's so weird. That is such a weird thing to actually think about.
I mean, from a legal perspective, she would be like, sure, she wasn't your wife the way that Aaron or the other guy was, but that doesn't make her not a step-parent. And like you said, she did help you with this thing, so you know, there's some level of care there, even if you haven't like formally. I don't know if you formally met her or not, or if it's just like phone calls or stuff. But,
Yeah,
you know,
no. In fact, Sky probably knows Amy better than I do, cause
what? How?
Dad asked Sky if she would like Amy's contact information, and from what I remember, they've had a couple discussions because Amy is also chronically ill, like Sky.
Oh.
Yeah.
You know, now I think about it, what was the last time Sky was on stream with you?
When we were playing I was playing Silent Hill 2 last week. Sky actually showed up, and I was half inebriated during the Let's Play. Actually, I had a glass of bourbon with my burger that evening, and I very casually made a joke about she said "fuck you," and I casually said, "Just tell me when and where." In retrospect, I probably should not have said that, but my decision-making skills were impaired by the alcohol, so...
Well, for your sake, I hope Sky knows the difference between drunk Seth and normal Seth.
Oh, she does. She laughed, kind of, and I'm like, I immediately apologized. I'm like, I'm sorry. I tend to say things I would not normally otherwise say when I am drunk. And she teasingly went, "Wouldn't you though? Wouldn't you?" And I'm like, okay, maybe I would. So it was all good fun. A great time was had by all, and that's what matters. I hope Sky's doing better though. I got a text from her this morning and she was really going through it. There's some stuff that's really eating at her, and the worst part is I wasn't able to help her by talking about it with her. because it pertained to stuff that we disagree with. Her words, not mine. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'll pray. I didn't tell her that I'd pray for her. I mean, I did pray for her, but you know, it's one of those situations where it's like, I wish there was more I could do to help. Lazy in the chat, don't apologize. Chad, yes, that shit.
Oh, the from earlier. Yeah, I see. No, I was gonna say it's like, yes, I pray for her, and that's great, but like, why not tell her that you're praying for her? Is she not a Christian?
No, she is. I don't know if that would have helped or not.
Oh, like in that context.
Yeah.
So was it? I don't want to go too much into this. I know it's a personal thing, but like, was it like just a simple disagreement, or was it getting a little heated? Like, how was the feeling of the comment?
She was already really heated, and apparently I am her one surviving friend, and she was pissed off about something, and the fact that she didn't think we could discuss it was pissing her off further, and so I didn't want to say anything that could potentially backfire. When I get myself into situations where there's conflict, I tend to try and disengage, just because I have a history of conflict with my family, be it my brother or my mom, both. And I try to disengage to keep things from boiling over.
You know, I'm in a similar situation myself. Like especially when it comes to like politics and stuff, sometimes things in the family get a little too heated at times. And we're the kind of household where when we disagree, we don't just disagree. We literally scream at each other. We are very loud people. We're Puerto Rican, so it goes to the territory. But I will say this, speaking from experience, it's typically not a good idea to like leave like anything like unresolved that's like causing tension. So obviously not right now because she's not with us, but if you guys ever talk again, and you know, hopefully she's in a better mood, I would just try to figure out what exactly the issue is. I don't know if it's like an issue or disagreement or what have you, but whatever it is, just try and sort that out, because the longer you let that linger and hinder, the more negatively it could impact your guys' relationship going down the road.
Yeah, that's good advice. And in retrospect, maybe I should have just said I'll pray for you, or let her know that I was praying for her. But I didn't. Sometimes I worry that me saying that comes across as condescending. I don't know.
I mean, you said you would pray for me when you pray for me, and I didn't see it as condescending.
That's true. That's true. But I've known people who weren't Christians who get mad when you say things like, "Oh, thoughts and prayers, or I'll pray for you," because they think it's like a way of not actually helping with the problem.
I mean, that kind of says less about you and more about them. Like, whenever people get mad over people praying for them or saying they're going to pray for them, that's usually because there's something within their heart that's kind of like viewing it in like a twisted or crooked kind of lens. And there could be a million reasons why that happens. For example, if somebody had an abusive father growing up, for example, it can actually taint their image of God, because, you know, God is your heavenly father, and your parents are the first people you interact with when you enter the world for the first time. And if that relationship is strained or non-existent, that can impact not just relationship with God directly, but also relationship with like basically any other human being they could possibly ever meet.
Yeah.
Wow, this got extremely heavy.
I know. Yeah. We were just doing some preamble and things got really out there. Lazy in the chat, women don't want you to offer solutions. They want to know that someone's listening. 17 years of confused, what are you mad? I'm right. Arguments taught me this. I figured that out a while ago, and it just pissed me off.
I will say this though, I like Ben Shapiro's advice on the topic, because he did a video on this a while ago. Because some guy asked him like, "Hey, I'm having trouble with a girl, and I keep man, what do I do?" And he goes, "Okay, phrase it like this," because he's married for a couple of years, and he gave this like this, because one day his wife and him were having a conversation. At first, he did what he usually does and offered a solution to the problem, but she goes, no, 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 I don't want that. And then he goes, okay, slow down, wait a minute. Are you telling me this because you actually want a solution to your problem, or are you telling me this because you just want somebody to listen? And as soon as she answered that question, no, I just want to listen. Yeah, okay, and he just sat there and listened. And I think that should be the strategy going forward. First, figure out whether or not they actually want a solution. If they want a solution, give them a solution. Pretty simple. We're simple. Men are simple creatures. We like to solve problems. But if they don't want a solution, they just want somebody to listen. Then you just shut up and listen. I don't even rude, but that's really all you can really do at that point. Just let her, vent out her frustrations, vent out her troubles, and then, you get sick from there.
See, here's the thing about that. I get pissed off when people don't want a solution because that comes across as, oh, that person just wants to complain, and that's not really me being. I don't try to be judgmental here, but it was a hard I used to be a complainer. I used to whine and complain, and I had to learn a very hard lesson to not do that and to suck up the shit that life throws at you and solve problems. I became really good at solving problems. So to see someone still stuck on the complaining stage makes me very angry.
See, if it was a man who just complained 24/7, that'd be kind of beta. That'd be kind of pathetic. Like, listen, you're a grown-ass man. You should be able to handle these things. When it's a woman doing it, it's a little different because for women, sometimes just venting out frustrations is the best way to process the emotions that they're going through because of the situation that they're in. There are some women out there who can think pretty rationally, like a Rick, for example. But, most women are not like that. Most women, they have to, it's not just a matter of thinking, it's a matter of just speaking out the emotions, putting it out there so they can understand what the heck is going on in their brains. At least with us, we can kind of do that. We do that internal. We think through it, and then we act based on that. Women can't really do that as efficiently. So that's where we come in as the listeners and the supporters, and then just be there for them when they're at their lowest. That's all we can really do.
Yeah. I think I need to rewire my brain to not be so hostile to people that just want someone to listen to them. It's not
Dude,
not everyone who's like that is a complainer. I need to deprogram my brain there. Lazy in the chat. Rick is 100% right.
Yeah, dude. I know from autist to autist, I can understand why it'd be difficult to understand somebody's emotions, especially when they're not being explicitly obvious about what those emotions are or the way they're communicating it. But I think the more you kind of train your brain to understand that, especially regarding to women, the better off you're going to be in the long term.
Yeah.
I do find it funny I give such fantastic relationship advice, despite the fact that I myself have not been in a relationship for over a decade.
You want to know something funny? I haven't been in my relationships are few and far between. My last relationship that actually was something significant was back when I was that would have been 2017, 2018 thereabouts. Before that, it was the girl I dated in high school. All of my relationships, in every single relationship I've been in, even the ones I've been in when I was a kid, I have never once gotten into a fight with my romantic partner.
Bro, you are so lucky. The one relationship I was in literally ended over a fucking argument.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Yeah, even when we broke up, it's always been, hey, I think we should see. It's always been like, hey, I think we should see other people. It's like, yeah, you know what? I think this relationship has run its course. Maybe you're right. Sometimes it was more painful than others. In the case of the girl that I dated when I was 11 or 12, that one we both kind of realized the relationship had run its course, even though I did love her. The one in high school, how that ended, that was sad. That one hurt to end because I was a teenage dipshit, but I still actually had genuine feelings for the girl that I was dating. But there was just so much nonsense in the way. Her parents did not like me, and admittedly, I was somewhat of a bad influence. But on top of that, it was just hard to it was just getting hard to make things work between us, and I actually broke it off, and I'm like, man, why did I do it? To this day I still go, why did I do that? I was in like I was kind of depressed about it for a good few months actually.
Oh wait. Oh, let me ask you. I know it's been a couple years, so you probably already know the answer to this. But when you made the decision to end the relationship, did you ever reconsider and try bringing things back up, or was it like, no, this is it, this is over, we're moving on?
You know, I don't know. I think part of me wanted to try and make things work again, but I think, if memory serves correct, she had started going to another school by that point, and it was hard to get back in touch with her, so, yeah.
I see. Well, you know what happens. Whenever things end, whether it's a relationship or a job or even a loved one passing away, there's always a reason for it that we can't fully understand on this side of eternity. And the best thing we can do is try and learn from what maybe God's trying to show us these experiences and use that to better forge the path ahead.
Yeah, I take every failed relationship as an object lesson in what not to do. Although, admittedly, actually, only one was really an object lesson for me, and that was the one in high school. The girl I dated in, like, 2017 to 2018, in that instance, she just stopped responding to my texts. Now, she suffered from paranoid schizophrenia, and my first assumption was, oh, hospitalization. That was really weird, though, because it's like, we had agreed to meet up for a date at my place, and she no-showed and didn't reply to any of my texts or anything. Didn't reply to any of my messages on Facebook. She isn't even active on social media anymore, so I hope she's all right. I genuinely don't know what happened. For all I know, she got institutionalized. Lazy in the chat, bullet dodged. Yeah, especially because my family has a history of paranoid schizophrenia. Both my dad's mom and my mom's dad had schizophrenia. It is a fucking miracle. I am dying on this hill. It is an actual fucking miracle that none of us kids are schizophrenic.
Well, to be fair, neither your direct parents it's schizophrenia either.
True, but still, the deck is pretty loaded.
True. But it goes to show that sometimes, things can pass down my blood, but not everything gets passed down my blood. I mean, I'm almost as hairy as my paternal grandfather, but my dad has almost no body hair whatsoever.
He fell for the Menharia meme. What's Menharia?
I have no idea, and I'm gonna look that up.
Well, since this is kind of evolved into a junk drawer episode, you want to talk about Luce?
Oh yeah. Well, oh, I know her. Yeah, I think if I recall correctly, she is I guess, what the mascots or characters they created to celebrate the upcoming Jubilee. I think the purpose, if I recall correctly, was specifically to help promote Catholicism in Japan by creating a character who could sort of appeal to the youth to get them interested in the faith.
Yeah, I saw Redeemed Zoomer's announcement on his Discord server that was the no anime announcement, and I'm like, bro, you just did the Matt Walsh meme. Funny enough, I would go on to learn Redeemed Zoomer unironically agrees with Matt Walsh that anime is satanic.
Well, the sad part is when Matt says that he's being sarcastic. What this guy says, I don't know.
He unironically quoted Matt Walsh. I think he's serious.
No, I know Zoomer's serious. I'm
Yeah.
saying Walsh isn't serious.
Yeah, no, well, here's the thing. Nobody takes Matt Walsh seriously. At least anyone worth listening to doesn't.
That's true. The man is the king of sarcasm. The only people who take him literally are the kind of people who hate him.
Lazy in the chat, I'm so excited for anime Christianity. Bro, Lazy, have you seen the anime My Last Day? It's a anime adapting the story of the thief on the cross from the thief's perspective of his time in prison up to his crucifixion. It's not
Ooh.
long. It's like 30 minutes, I think. You can find it on YouTube.
You know what else is crazy though? The Catholic Church in the 90s actually made an anime adaptation of the Bible.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I found it on Twitter. I think I lost the link. I think I bookmarked it. I don't remember, but it's out there, so you can see that too. Also, by the way, in terms of Menhera meme, Menhera is actually a Japanese slang term used to describe a person, typically a woman, with a mental health disorder, aka
Oh.
aka the last girl you dated.
Yeah. Well, Emily was great. Like, she was very kind, very sweet, very soft-spoken. It's just that the communication completely broke down at the end.
That's kind of what happened to me and the last girl from Ohio that I was talking to. It's like she left for Korea in like a few months ago, and I texted her when she was supposed to get back because I was planning a date to be with her in July, but then she's never got back to me.
Yeah. Lazy in the chat. I've heard of it, haven't seen it. Okay. Yeah, I actually made some posts on Twitter talking about Luce, and the way I see it, it's not profaning our faith. It's not an image of worship. It's just an art piece meant to make young people connect their hobby to their faith and reflect on their faith. That can only be a good thing.
Yeah, it's usually in Catholic circles, there's an intensity in the Catholic Church. On the one hand, you got the more traditional or rad trad Catholics who despise the thing and do not want anything to do with it. And on the other hand, you have the more creative or younger Catholics who are in favor of the thing for many of the reasons you described, and or the ones that don't really care, don't see a problem with it. I mean, the ones that don't care are not debating, obviously, but like the ones who are the most passionate, it's mainly on Twitter, to be honest. I don't think it's going to harm a thing one way or the other. I just see it as just another way to help bring people who aren't part of the faith into Christ. And again, that is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Some of my Catholic brethren or brothers or sisters might disagree with me, but, let's not fret over this. We need to focus on the matters at hand. Because, again, it's about souls.
Yes. If you can take a secular medium and use it to glorify God, that's an overall positive. That's why I pull from unconventional worship songs, like I have a habit of doing on Branch Brothers.
Yeah, I think on Branch we had talked about how, Halloween, used to be a bunch of pagan holidays, but then the church came in and converted it into one that glorified God. And that's what the church has done for the last 2,000 years, right? They'll take pagan cultures, pagan beliefs, and they'll not just convert the peoples, but they'll actually convert the cultures to a more Christian worldview. That's actually how, last week I talked about how Christianity, one of the advantages, it can blend into any culture, any faith, any place, and part of how it does that is by converting pagan belief. I think I mentioned this on Sunday too, but I want to reinforce it here, right? I think this whole loose situation is another example of the church taking something that wasn't explicitly created to be Christian and making a version that adapts it in order to help spread the message of God. And I think that's the purpose there.
Yeah, and if you're of the millennial mind in your approach to eschatology, and let me break that down for our viewers, because I know those are unusual words. Amillennial is the idea that the kingdom of God is here, but it's also yet to come. And eschatology is your outlook on how everything plays out in the end. if you're of an amillennial mindset in your approach to eschatology, it's the church's job to transform culture. So when I see the Catholic Church making like art that appeals to fans of anime and transforming the culture for Christ like that, the church is doing its job. It's a healthy thing to be doing. Now that's not to say that we should, because this is the opposite of the church adopting culture and being transformed by culture. If the church is transforming culture, that's a good thing. If the church is being transformed by culture, that might be cause for concern. But I don't.
Yeah,
But the way you measure if the church is being transformed or the culture is being transformed is by, for lack of a better way to put it, the health of people's hearts. If people have their eyes set on God and are growing closer to Him, it's likely that the church is transforming the culture. If people are turning away from God, then it's likely that the church is being transformed by the culture. If you have the church spreading heresy or affirming sinful behavior, then it's definitely being transformed by the culture, and that's cause to sound the alarm.
yeah, absolutely. And we got to keep in mind, part of the reason, and what's out here in the United States is their perspective, because I want to pivot over here. Part of the reason we have so many problems in the U.S. in terms of like our morals and values being so like backward and pagan compared to what it used to be, is precisely because of the fact that in many ways, the churches here in America have either lost their influence over the culture or they become one with the culture, and in either scenario, it has opened the door for a lot of the kind of beliefs that used to be condemned in American society. And now, because it's been, normalized for so long, we now have to put in the work to kind of reverse that trend. Because you gotta keep in mind that politics is downstream of culture, which in turn is downstream of religion. And, when people learn to put God first, right, everything else falls into place, Then we can change the culture, move it in a more Christ-centered direction, and then from there, when the hearts of the people are aligned correctly, then that in turn will be reflected in the politics. And then from there, everything else will be more in line with how things ought to be and how we want it to be, rather than how it currently is right now. But in order to get to that point, we need to work with what we have first, make it as good as we possibly can, and then keep pushing it and pushing it until we finally get to the point where we can really start to enact the kind of change that we want to see.
Right. And the church can't transform culture if it's being led by people who hate fun and creativity and art.
It also can't transform the culture if it's simply too afraid to engage with the culture or being seen as like a political force. Now, some people may label the church as a political force because they hate the church, but the church in of itself is not a political institution. It is meant to be above that in many ways. Like, it's meant to go directly into the hearts of the people, help them to know how much God truly loves them, wants to be with them, and provide the place for those believers to gather and profess God together, that they can walk the path together. And then that in turn is going to change everything around it. I mean, Western civilization as we know it might not even exist had not been for the efforts by the church to maintain, not just to maintain order, but to spread and grow the faith well after the fall of the Western Roman Empire.
Yep. Well, this has certainly been a sermon. Let's say we get to the creepypastas now. I know we've got like 9 people watching according to my according to the Streamlabs desktop software.
Oh, wow. That was fascinating. All right. Well, if I recall correctly, we had one last part in that story. I think after that, I think you could probably into Luigi's Mansion. I want to reach your old self for that, but I'm sure you have that in the docket as well.
Yep. I have the story open right here. I will share my screen so we can relay this back and forth, because this part is a long part. There we go.
And it's the longest of the 5. Oh, by the way, be sure to share your screen before we get started so I can actually see this.
Yes. What is this? Oh, this is lyrics for Ghostbusters. I was doing some recording earlier. That is lyrics to our opening for this episode. Here we go. Part 5. Sleep tight. I am shaking as I write this. I was released by the police less than 2 hours ago, and I am compelled to record the events of the past day and night as quickly and as accurately as possible. In some ways, I want to forget, but I know that I cannot. I know that I should not. For my own sanity, I must divulge what has happened. It is far too important. Should I ever allow myself to be swayed by the mechanical, rational nature of the world once again, these words should serve to remind me that what is unseen is both mysterious and frightening. After Mary left, I knew that I had lost her forever, but rather than be consumed by depression and inaction, I was invigorated by one purpose, by one thought, by one idea that I knew I had to carry out. I had to destroy that thing, for I could not allow the chance that it may one day hurt my loved ones or desecrate the innocence of another child. I also knew that I faced death, but feeling that I had already lost everything, that was a small price to pay. It is said that revenge is a dish best served cold, but having waited my entire adult life to be rid of this thing, its memory and the shadow that it had cast upon me, I met the proposition of killing this fiend, this corrupt and perverted force, with a smile on my face. That night, it would be dead, even if I had to drag it to hell with me. Busying myself for the next few hours, I packed a bag and wrote a letter to Mary and my family, explaining that what had happened and that they weren't to blame. I phoned my mother and father, then my brother, just to hear their voices one last time, but I did not let on that thought I may never speak to them again. My mother's intuition led her to ask if everything was all right. I smiled and told her I loved her before reluctantly saying goodbye. At around 7 o'clock, I made my way out to the car. The sun had already set and the street seemed eerily quiet. As if the scene of an unattended funeral, I had sat in the driver's seat, leaving the door on the other side open, awaiting my most unwelcome passenger. By 9 o'clock, nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. The place remained deserted, and the cold night air, flowing through the open door, was beginning to bite. As I sat there, contemplation echoed through my mind. I ruminated on the nature of this cadaverous parasite. One question rose out of a sea of thoughts, towering above all else, unmoving and continuous. Can you kill something which is already dead? I didn't know if this was a thing of the grave or some otherworldly specter, which could be considered alive in some way. But just as I was reevaluating my plan, there it was. It was subtle at first, but there was a small, almost indistinguishable shift in the suspension of the car. Had it been any other circumstance, I would have put this down to a gust of the wind pushing and pulling at the chassis. But I was all too familiar with the feeling from all those years ago, as the bunk bed would shift slightly, with that thing climbing into the bottom bed. I knew its foul calling card. The air grew denser, as if contaminated by some nearby corpse. It was in the car with me, unseen, yes, but there nonetheless. As I heard the slightest of whispered breaths from the back seat, I leaned over and calmly closed the passenger door. I turned the key in the ignition, and as I pulled out of the street, I could have sworn I heard a quiet yet distinctly malicious snicker, as if something was mocking me. Did it know of what I had planned for it? Our destination was not far, but the roaming hills through which our taken country road penetrated rose up and diminished with regularity, a stark reminder of the ominous isolation of night. Occasionally on the way, I could hear something from behind, but I refused to look for that thing in the dark. Patience. It would not be long before I would confront it. Lazy in the chat, cadaverous parasite sounds like a Bloodborne boss. Yeah, it does. Super metal. The irony hit me. I was worried about scaring off the same thing which had terrified and tortured me as a child. I had to be resilient, and so drove carefully and calmly through the countryside, swamped by darkness, hoping that my unearthly passenger would not suspect me. I arrived. The wheels of the car struggled and slid on the undergrowth as I headed off to the narrow country road. The landscape had opened up as I looked at the broken and rotting trees around me. I felt that it was fitting to come to this bleak place in the cold night to destroy the bleakest of things. The land suddenly came to an abrupt end. A cliff etched out from an old quarry looking deep into the black waters of the lake below. The cliff edge was relatively flat, and had in fact at one time housed a road which had subsided into the lake decades earlier. The local kids would tell stories about the vengeful ghosts of those killed during the subsidence, but they were just stories, or perhaps they weren't. In the past, I would have disregarded such tales, but who would believe mine if I told it to them now? I switched the engine off and parked several meters away from the cliff edge, switching off any lights and composing myself for what would come. I sat in the car for what seemed like a lifetime, the only company given to me by the occasional splash of water against that cliff below. I waited. This thing was smart. Of that there was no doubt. It had toyed with me, relishing the pain and torment it had caused as only something of a coldly frozen intellect could. For this reason, I knew it would suspect me, and perhaps even flee if I brought the car too close to the cliff's edge. I had to wait for it to attack, let it feed, let it revel, and gorge itself on me. Perhaps then it would not notice as I slowly plunged the car into the dark, icy water below. I was going to drown the bastard. I had appraised the potential consequences in my head, and reasoned that there would be a moment, a singular moment, where I would have a slim opportunity to escape from the car just before it reached the edge. Mary and I used to go there occasionally, a place to be together away from everything else, and it did not look nearly as dark during a summer's day. I therefore had the place in mind and knew it well. The drop was at least 30 feet to the depths below, and I did not want to be in that car as it hit the water, nor trapped inside with that abomination. Oh, man. The fact that I know how long it takes a car to sink when it hits the water ruins this for me.
You know that detail?
Yes, I do. It takes your average car about 2 minutes before it starts to sink.
Oh.
If you
it's gonna be here for a while then.
Yeah. If you have electric windows, they usually have redundancies built into them, so that way you can still roll them down if you are sinking. However, you're really better off opening the car door. The water pressure the water coming in will cause it to sink faster, but you can get out easier that way than if you were to try and climb through the window.
Oh, I see.
Lazy in the chat. Important knowledge. Yeah, you never know when you have to make something look like an accident. I mean, what? I waited. Then I heard it, slowly at first, and then increasing in rate and volume, a rasping, wheezing breath from behind. Strangely, it sounded more labored than before, each breath a struggle, filled with fluid, rotten and decayed. A shiver ran up my spine. A rank, foul smell began to fill the air. The breath drew closer from behind. My heart began to race, beating hard and fast as I looked up and saw the windscreen begin to ice up from inside. I could see my breath, a natural thing indeed, but what was unnatural was the breath invisibly moving across my face from the side. I turned slowly. I wanted to cry. I wanted to leave, run into the night, but I had to stay. I could not allow it to escape. It was sitting in the passenger seat. I was staring at it, and it at me, hunched over, covered by darkness, contorted, gaunt hands seized as if fighting rigor mortis. It slowly moved toward me. One bony leg cracked and groaned as it slid over my lap and onto the other side. Oh God, it was sitting on me. It pulled itself in close to me, and through a shard of light provided by the moon, I saw its face. Skin hung from its jagged features, glassy eyes stared deep into me as its grin spread up through its face, unnaturally wide as the result of half-rotten flesh exposing the rotten muscles, broken teeth, and sinews of its rancid smile beneath. Pulling closer, it opened its mouth, revealing a wet and putrid tongue, which could be seen through part of its missing jaw. Wheezing, breathing heavily, a foul stench which stung my eyes and filled my mouth elicited a response from me as I retched, my body attempting to expel its poisonous fumes, and as I did so, it stopped for a moment and then cackled to itself, happy, content. Staring into its icy cold eyes, it yet gave the impression of an afflicted and increasingly weak old man. It was still incredibly strong, but it seemed as though it had lost some of its potency. Perhaps leaving that elongated room had somehow affected it? Its long, putrid fingers caressed my face, and then, as a shadow of intent, it stuck on me, one of them deep into my shoulder. I screamed as it bent and twisted inside of me, the rotting fiend moving its finger in to cause the maximum amount of damage and pain that it could. As it did so, its other hand slid down against my body. It touched me. It was time. With the free arm, I turned on the ignition, and though my shoulder was still pinned to the seat, I managed to fight through the pain, put the car into gear, and took off as fast as I could. The creature flailed and screamed. It attempted to climb over me into the back seat, but I held on with all of my strength. The thoughts of what it did to Mary enough to fuel my rage. We raced towards the edge of the cliff, and I eyed the driver's door frantically. As we neared our icy plunge, I screamed in anger at its festering, rancid face and pushed it off me. It scrambled into the back seat for dear life as I scrambled for mine by unlocking the car door. It was too late. The car careered over the cliff, and before I knew it, we hit the dark water, splitting the black, glass-like surface with tremendous force. I should have died then, but an airbag took the brunt of my impact, although I still managed to scrape my head across the door frame. Dazed, I looked around. The sound that I heard coming from that thing was malformed yet familiar. The squeal of some demonic child soon gave way to the anguish and rage of an ancient intelligence which knew that it had faced almost certain death. The water was frozen and poured in through the now twisted open car door with such force that it winded me. I gasped for air, my unwilling prey now did. It writhed and twisted as it looked for an exit. Spying the open door, it pulled itself through the water towards me. I curled up my fist and smashed it into that thing's face. Pieces of rotten flesh flaked off under the impact as dark black liquid oozed from the resulting wound. Again, it attempted to get past me, and I knew that to keep it in the car long enough to drown, that I would have to die with it. I felt numb as the frozen water slipped over my chin. My heart struggled against the cold, and with a sudden surge, I was submerged and had breathed my last. I held my breath, but only to compose and ready myself for an icy, suffocating death. I hoped that it would not be painful. My thoughts returned to Mary and my family. An all-consuming sense of sadness and despair overwhelmed me. But as I struggled with that thing, trying to get past me, and through the door, grabbing and flailing with its arms, I looked down and saw it. Its leg was trapped between the dashboard and the floor of the car by the impact of the fall, and although it could move, it couldn't leave. I turned immediately for the door and could barely see but a foot in front of me in that black water, but there was enough moonlight to light my way. Just as I got to the door, the wretch grabbed hold of me and pulled me back to it. It had given up all hope of escaping, but it wanted me to drown with it. We fought for what felt like an age in that cold, bitter grave as the car slowly sank deeper and deeper into the darkness. I could now feel my body pleading with me to take a breath, to exhale my last gasp of air and then inhale the frozen water. I am happy to say that I used my wits to get out of such a horrible fate. Orienting my body, I pushed my feet against the dashboard with enough force to at last escape its slippery grasp. I do not remember much else, bar the anguish and hate-filled scream that my tormentor let out as I left it to die at the bottom of that icy lake. I found myself walking through the wilderness, cold, wet, but alive. The wound in my shoulder slowed me down, but I kept that bleeding at bay by applying pressure to it with my other hand. It took me 2 hours to walk home, and I am amazed that I did not collapse from exhaustion or hypothermia. When I saw the familiar sight of the street that I lived on, I was filled with a sense of accomplishment, a sense of pride and triumph. I had beaten that thing once and for all. That is, until I went inside my house and found a trail of large, wet footprints leading from the front door to my bed. Disbelief took me, despair so sharp and so overwhelming that I am unable to convey it with mere words. It was laying in my bed, waiting, a white sheet covering its emaciated body from sight. The human mind is a wonderful thing. Just as you believe your body has reached a level of exhaustion that it cannot recover from, that your emotions are so frayed that you feel you cannot continue, a thought springs as if miraculous from a weary mind. Let it rest for now. I quietly crept through the dark and picked up my wallet, which I had left on a small coffee table in the center of my living room, leaving the door unlocked. I left to attend to a new plan, and returned an hour later with a moment's preparation. I slipped into the spare room. There I lay in that unsullied bed, waiting. I was sure that this was the end game, that instead of toying with me, it would come for the kill. How it had escaped that watery grave, I did not know. But I would be damned if it would escape again. I could only hope that it would sense me from the other room. I closed my eyes, pretending to be sound asleep. Time lumbered onwards, and although I fought it, exhaustion finally took me, sending me into a deep slumber. I woke with its hands around my neck. It coughed and spluttered on top of me, a rancid black liquid dripping on my face as it oozed from its facial wounds. I struggled, gasping for air, and hoping that I had the strength in me to escape its grasp, but it was too strong and my hands could not grip it with any sense of conviction, as it seemed to be dripping wet from its plunge into the lake. It may not have seemed rational at the time, but as my vision dimmed and the last light of consciousness extinguished within me, I did so as many animals do in their last moments. I played dead. Laying motionless, holding my breath, it shook me violently by the neck and then released me. I waited for my moment, my last chance to destroy this thing. It labored, breathing, relaxed slightly, and seemed to stare at me almost quizzically. How do you know that if you played dead? I waited still for a shift of weight which may have let me throw it to the ground. Leaning down close to me, its wide, crumbling sneer puckered, gathering its putrid saliva in its mouth, and in what was left of its cheeks, it then showed utter contempt for the living and the dead. It spat its festering fluid onto my face, the remnants dripping down onto me through a hole in its jaw. I wanted to scream, to do anything to remove such a vile smear on my skin, but I dared move. The time was not right. Leaning in closer, it prodded and scratched at the wound in my shoulder, the pain shearing through my body with all of my resistance. I remained motionless. Then it slowly and patiently slid two of its long, distended fingers into my mouth. The taste was overwhelming. Rancid, rotten, dead. The arthritic clicking of its knuckles shook my resolve. As it arched its back in glee, it suddenly pushed its fingers deep down my throat. I gagged in an instinctive reaction. Instead of being shocked, a garbled laugh emanated through its broken teeth as it thrust its fingers deeper into my mouth. I felt its cold, hard flesh scraping against the inside of my throat, pleading without words for it to stop. In the darkest of moments, we sometimes find our true strength. I rolled to my side, using its weight against it, and finally managed to break free. I fell onto the floor, its long reach grasping at my feet. I kicked and screamed, and at last I was free. It started at me only for a moment, rising up onto the top of the bed, its brittle bones crackling under its own force. It now towered tall and gaunt, ready to pounce. Since I was a child, I had been a victim. It had terrorized me, taken my innocence, attacked Mary, and broken my life. I would not stand for it anymore. Sometimes the most dangerous prey is the one who can outthink you. The one that lulls you into a false sense of dominance or superiority. The one who has conquered any fear of you with a sense of anger and betrayal. It had fallen into my trap. One conceived by logic, reason, and understanding of the world through the eyes of a scientific mind. Fire cleanses all. As it groaned, shrieked, crackled, and contorted, readying itself to pounce, in one swift motion, I removed the blanket from the floor, revealing a bucket filled with gasoline, which I had brought in that short time of preparation. I threw it as hard as I could, the liquid splashing all over that horror and the bed. It grinned at me, mocking my very existence, making light of my pain and the agony it had caused. From my pocket, I pulled out a lighter, lit it, and threw it onto the wretched thing. It writhed and screamed in agony, parts of its flesh crumbling away, searing into nothing in front of my very eyes. I almost felt sorry for it. Let it burn. The fire got out of hand. Thankfully, a neighbor heard the screams and saw the smoke, calling the fire brigade. I remember nothing of how I escaped. I spent several hours in hospital being treated for light smoke inhalation and painful burns to my hands. It still hurts as I type, but as with many superficial wounds, they'll heal. Perhaps there will be a few scars, but I can live with that. The police arrested me shortly afterwards, believing me a murderer. They suspect that I killed someone in that fire, and find it entirely suspicious that I have a deep wound in my shoulder and scratches over my body. I've been told not to stray far in case they will wish to ask me further questions, but they can ask away. I doubt they'll believe my answers. They found no remains, nor any evidence that someone else was there, bar a strange outline of a figure etched deep into the bed and wall. It looked as though whatever had been there attempted an escape, but I don't think it managed to accomplish that. A weight has now been lifted from my shoulders, one which I now realize was always there, since I was a child, in fact. I believe that thing had an effect on me, even from a distance, and now that it's gone, I feel whole again. I am devastated that I have lost Mary, and my house can be written off as I'll probably be charged with arson, after they realize I started the fire, which means I can kiss goodbye any insurance claim. My hands ache as does my shoulder, but my spirit does not. I am writing this from a hotel room. It's small, unassuming, but it will suit my purposes. Tonight I intend to sleep and dream, as I did as a child before that wretch invaded my life. Rick, do you want to read now?
I'll take over from here. I believe that it was my rationality which saved me, my logical thought which allowed me to destroy such an evil, but I will never escape the conclusion that there is much more to life beyond the veil out there in the darkness. It is a world I have seen, and do not care to revisit, but tonight I will rest and tomorrow I will build my life again, with the knowledge that my unwelcome guest is gone forever. I can feel it, I know it. It will take time for me to adjust, and perhaps my mind will play a trick or two along the way. It is difficult to abandon the paranoia of a lifetime. I must learn to accept my safety once again. I refuse to be looking over my shoulder for the rest of my days, but I will always be cautious, as I was when I was in the hospital this morning, lying on a bed in a quiet ward. I thought I felt the bad shake for the briefest of moments, but I know that it was just my imagination. I am glad that I have written down my experiences. It has illuminated much of myself to me, and most importantly that should anyone ever, God forbid, find themselves in a similar situation, then maybe you will know what to do. Now, it is bedtime, I must rest, for I have never known a weariness such as this. Good night, and sleep tight.
And that was bedtime.
Woohoo!
I wish the video game of this still worked.
Ah, that's true. Who knows, maybe something will remastered for modern consoles.
Well, other RPG Maker games did get remasterings. Maybe this one will as well. Hey, Rick, maybe you could make a video game out of this.
Maybe, if I had a team and resources, of course. Oh, I'll say this, though. Is there a video of the gameplay on YouTube?
As a matter of fact, there is. There are Let's Plays of it. It's although the video game wasn't called Bedtime. The video game was called It Moves. Did anyone make a playlist? Filters.
Not sure.
Sort by playlist. Here we go. Let's play And Yet It Moves. Oh, here we go. 7 episodes long. I will just post this in the chat. We'll throw this...
In the video channel, put it there.
Oh yeah, here we go. So if y'all want to see the video game that this was based on, here you go. I would kill to play this for Spooktober Spectacular, but I can't get it to run on modern hardware. When I try and launch it on Steam, it just sits there and does nothing.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, because I still have it in my library, hoping that one day somebody will patch it and make it playable. Yeah, here it is. Oh, you know what? I wonder what's going on in this discussion. Patch history. Please make more achievements. Nostalgic. I need some help. Happy fit. Wait, so people have gotten this to work in 2023. Okay, you know what, chat? Maybe this does work. Maybe I am an idiot. That is a distinct possibility.
Well, let's try playing it, see what happens.
Yeah, let me activate the display panel really quick so our viewers can see what I'm looking at. Here's the display.
Here we go. Let's see.
Yeah, see, it just... Launching executable failed, last played today. So it's not even like Fallout 3, it just straight up fails to launch.
Interesting. I mean, maybe the people were playing on Windows 8 or something, who knows?
It's completely stuck on this part of the game. 2023. Bug in Chapter 7. Really enjoyed the game. Maybe it's an issue with the Steam version. I bet if I checked around online, maybe I could find more. I'll research this a bit later. So, do we want to read another creepypasta, or should we jump right into Luigi's Mansion?
Let's head to Luigi's Mansion. It has been over an hour since we started, and we got a bit sidetracked in the start. I think what we can do is maybe for tomorrow and Halloween, of course, we'll read more creepypastas, but let's finish the story today, and we'll do another story another day.
Well, tomorrow is Old Republic night.
Oh, right. Okay, so even better. We'll say we'll do creepypastas for Halloween. How about that?
Yeah, creepypastas and Luigi's Mansion as part of the Halloween special. I will now, if you follow our YouTube channel, you might have noticed that I haven't uploaded anything today, and that I'm a bit behind on the videos. I'm not sure how I'm going to handle that. In all likelihood, either what's going to happen is I'm going to upload a shitload of videos onto YouTube on Halloween just throughout the day, space them out. Or alternatively, I increment them out over the next few weeks and we just kind of have an overflow like we've done in previous years. I'm going to call this either the Candy Bowl approach or the out-of-season approach. I'm not sure which one I'm going to go with yet.
Well, I would prioritize the episodes that came out this month, given that it is the month of Halloween, and then we can do the other stuff from before then, like at a later date.
Yeah.
Especially the episodes that came out like this week or last week. Closer to Halloween, the better.
Lazy in the chat, at less than a quarter up the door, the water becomes too heavy to push open. Keep in mind you'll be disoriented and possible have been knocked out for a bit from the impact. Oh yeah, in regards to the car and the water thing. Yeah, I really want to play It Moves. I will figure it out. I am gonna make it a mission to figure it out, because reading this was awesome. Alright, chat, I'm gonna go into BRB, and we'll start Luigi's Mansion.